Let's call the Tuesday, February 11th, 2014 committee to hold to order. It's approximately 5:35. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Councilman Maldonado.
Here.
Councilman Williams. Councilwoman Faircloth.
Here.
Councilwoman Woolman.
Here.
Councilman Burgess.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shelley.
Here.
Mayor Porter.
Here.
Thank you.
Are there any additions, deletions, Mr. Manager?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Then we'll proceed to tab 1, Mr. Manager.
Julio, you want to start us off?
Mayor and Council, the Florida Department of Transportation will provide an update on design options for the proposed Chrome Avenue truck bypass, which would redirect commercial truck traffic from the Chrome Avenue corridor between Campbell Drive and Florida City. And they're here to give a brief presentation.
Thank you, Julio. Push that red button and it'll go to green. It's not on.
It's green.
Hello? Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Dat Witten with the Florida Department of Transportation. I am the District Project Development Engineer and the Project Manager for the Chrome Truck Bypass Project. As Mr. Julio Brea discussed about the truck bypass is to divert truck traffic off of Chrome Avenue around the historic downtown. With me today, I have Jeff Easley with RS&H to make the presentation of our recommended alternative, and also to hear comments from the public as well as the council. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Easley, and I am the project manager. I'm with Reynolds Smith & Hills in Miami, and I am the project manager for the project development environment study that has been going on since 2008. And I know this is not the first study of the truck bypass. We're hoping it's the last. I've been involved with a truck bypass around the downtown area since 1993, so I'm well aware of the issues and some of the things that have come about. Very brief presentation, talk about the location in the background, the purpose and the need, the project alternatives that we considered. Our recommended alternative, and I'll say recommended, it's not in stone. We have yet to have a public hearing, so between now and the public hearing we'll be fine-tuning, and only after we get approval from FHWA will we call it our preferred alternative. Our cost estimates that we've developed, the next steps, and I mean by next steps, after this study's over, what has to happen to make it actually be constructed and implemented, and I'll take any questions that anyone may have. The project limits, the official project limits, are on Chrome Avenue from south of Flagler Avenue to Avocado. Now, we went well beyond that section to look at alternatives, but technically in the FDOT books and how it's logged, that's a section of Chrome that has yet to be studied. There has been studies that went from Flagler south. There's studies that have gone from Avocado north. There was a study that included this section back in 2002, but the truck bypass was taken out, so now we're back, and that's the official section of Chrome Avenue that's part of our limits. Chrome Avenue is part of the strategic intermodal system, and if you're not familiar with that, the SIS system started in 2008 in conjunction with the Florida Department of Transportation, the Florida Department of Commerce. They looked at the state, they identified the most important corridors, and hubs for economic benefits to their various regions and to the state as a whole. And the hubs can be airports, seaports, can be multimodal centers for rail, corridors can be roadway, waterways, and railways. Chrome Avenue was added to the SIS network primarily because of the truck traffic to and from the farmers market, the importance of that truck traffic to the growers in the area around Florida City and Homestead. That's why Chrome Avenue was added to the SIS. Background, and most of you are familiar with this, there was a truck route study done in 1993, shortly after Hurricane Andrew. I actually managed that project and did that. There was a PD&E study that was done and finished in 2003. The limits of that study was from Avocado to US 1. The truck bypass was studied then. A consensus could not be reached, so it was taken out, and now we're back studying primarily the truck bypass around downtown. The Homestead Transportation Plan, 2005. The city's Transportation Transit Plan in 2006. And our PD&E study that started in 2008 to the present. All these studies considered the truck bypass. The purpose and need. I mean, the purpose of this project is to redirect truck traffic around the historical district, and more importantly, to restrict truck traffic through the historical district. And it's very important to distinguish that. There's more than just redirecting, it's restricting. You know, a lot of our public meetings we've had 3 public information meetings for this project. We've briefed every official. We have a project advisory committee for this project. We presented our ideas, they've given us theirs, and one thing that was become clear to us is it's not good enough just to redirect trucks around downtown. We want to restrict trucks, meaning if they go through downtown, they can be ticketed. Make it illegal for trucks to go through downtown. That's the only way you're going to get them out of downtown. And there's a lot of things that go along with restricting trucks, especially on a state route, and I'll talk about that more later. Improve the truck mobility. Trucks don't like to go through downtown, but it's the shortest route. On-street parking, you have a lot of pedestrian activity downtown. We get the trucks out of downtown. It makes for a safer pedestrian environment as well as truck mobility. Emergency evacuation. You know, Chrome Avenue is one of the routes that Keys residents take, and they would take it if they could get through downtown and get out quicker. It would take some of the pressure off of US 1 and the turnpike. And overall, to revitalize the downtown area. We know that's been an important objective of the city for many years. Of course, what's shown on this map, the highlighted area is the official limits of the historic district on Chrome, roughly North 4th Street, south of Flagler. There's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle activity. There's on-street parking, and there's downtown businesses. The existing typical section on Chrome Avenue, it's a 3-lane facility with bidirectional turn lane in the center and 12-foot lanes, 1 in each direction with on-street parking and sidewalk. North of 4th Avenue, 4th to Avocado, we have the same typical section, on-street parking, 3-lane section all the way through, which makes it very difficult when you have heavy trucks coming through and you have vehicles in the middle that want to turn. You've all seen the trucks going through downtown. That's trucks coming through the downtown area. You have the 5-axle trucks that carry the produce, and you have all of the farm trucks that carry all the produce from the different growers to the farmers market. Now, over the last 6 years, almost, we've studied 12 corridors for the truck bypass. We've gone as far west as Redland Road, 187th Avenue, it's shown in purple all the way to the left of the graphic. We've considered many connections to US 1, which is the red line that runs. We considered going over to the turnpike. We considered diverting trucks to the turnpike. We presented all of these alternatives to the public at public meetings through the years of the study. So I would be willing to say there's no alternative that we have not considered. All of our alternatives, this is a flow chart that shows that we took all of the alternatives through a screening process. Our first screen eliminated all but 5. These alternatives were presented at a workshop. We took input from the residents. We took input from the elected officials. We took input from the staff. A lot of the criteria that we're trying to meet as part of this study, restricting trucks through downtown, led us to our recommended alternative of F, which is Campbell Drive. The official limits of the bypass route, Avocado Drive to Campbell Drive, east to US 1 and US 1 south. 2 ways that trucks would be able to get to the farmers market, Davis Parkway or Palm Drive. We're leaving both of those, improving both of those connections back to Chrome to the farmers market just in case, and giving them the option to use either one. Some of the key issues with the route, the turning radiuses at all of the intersections, primarily westbound Campbell to northbound Chrome Avenue. We have 9-foot travel lanes on Campbell Drive today. In the turning radius from US 1 to Davis Parkway, the turning radius from US 1 to Palm. This is the existing typical section on Campbell Drive from Chrome Avenue to First Road. You see here we have 9-foot travel lanes, 2 in each direction with a 10-foot center median and a sidewalk. And then from First Road US 1 we have 1 additional lane in the eastbound direction, still only 9-foot lanes. These are some photographs that we took of trucks that currently use Campbell Drive. There are trucks that actually use Campbell Drive. The photograph on the right is the truck trying to turn from Campbell Drive to go northbound on Chrome, and that's one area that we would improve with the project. As part of our alternative F, proposed improvements, widen Chrome Avenue from Campbell Drive to Avocado Drive, widen Campbell Drive from Chrome Avenue to US 1, and intersection improvements at Chrome Avenue in Campbell, US 1 in Campbell, US 1 in Davis Parkway, US 1 in Palm, and then on Chrome Avenue at Palm and Chrome Avenue in Davis. Anywhere trucks may turn, we're doing intersection improvements to make sure the turning radii are large enough for trucks to turn and stay in their own lane. Also doing signalization upgrades to current standards. And where applicable, we're doing pedestrian features for pedestrian crossings at any of the intersections that apply. This is the proposed typical section for Chrome Avenue. Since it's an SIS facility, this is SIS design standards, 4-lane facility, 2 12-foot lanes in each direction, a 15.5-foot center median, 4-foot bike lane on each side, and 6-foot sidewalk. Specifically, we would widen the 2 12-foot lanes and 4-foot bike lanes in each direction, remove the on-street parking, access management plan with a raised median. There would be right-of-way impacts about 6 feet in each direction on both sides. and it would include stormwater drainage improvements throughout the project. For Campbell Drive, it's the same typical section as for Chrome Avenue. From Chrome Avenue, the first road, we'd have two 12-foot lanes in each direction, a 15.5-foot median, 4-foot bike lane, and 6-foot sidewalk. These standards are FDOT SIS standards for 45 mile per hour design speed, which is the minimum design speed that we can use on an SIS facility. However, the speed limit will remain 30 miles per hour. And this is the section of Campbell Drive from First Road to US 1. We would have three 12-foot lanes in the eastbound direction, two in the westbound direction with a 15.5-foot median and a 4-foot bike lane. The widening of Campbell Drive provide two 12-foot lanes, 4-foot bike lane in each direction. We have a raised median, so there would be some access changes. And the right-of-way impacts on Campbell would be about 36 feet on the south side. We looked at widening equally on both sides, widening on the north side, widening on the south side. We determined that the least impacts would be to widen solely on the south side throughout the corridor. And as with Chrome, we would upgrade the stormwater drainage system to current standards.
Mr. Easley,
Yes.
we have a question. Turn your mic on.
Excuse me, thank you. You're saying an additional 36 feet from where the sidewalk is now would be needed, just for clarification?
Well, the back of the sidewalk now on the south side is the right-of-way line. From that line to the south would be about 36 feet.
Thank you.
Did you want to ask anything?
And in intersection improvements, I mentioned that at all the intersections along the corridor, Chrome and Campbell, US 1 and Campbell, US 1 Davis, US 1 and Palm, Chrome and Palm, Chrome and Davis Parkway. Primarily, we would look at adding left turn lanes where necessary, lengthening left turn lanes, putting in right turn lanes, upgrading the traffic signalization equipment to current standards, also widening the turning radii at all the turning radiuses where trucks may turn to make sure they can turn and stay within their own. Of course, with any PD&E study, we consider the environmental impacts. We know we have two historical sites on Chrome Avenue just north of Campbell, one on each side. The impacts to those properties are very minimal. We're going through the process now to get that approved through the State Historical Preservation Office. We're analyzing noise impacts caused by the trucks. One of the advantages of the Campbell Drive corridor, it's a commercial corridor with no residential or community facilities along the route. In our analysis so far, we have not found any significant environmental impacts to the corridor. The cost estimate, construction for Chrome Avenue, about $12 million. Right-of-way cost, $14 million. Campbell Drive, $13 million for construction, $12 million for right-of-way. And Davis Parkway, a little over $1 million. And then Palm and Campbell, Palm and Chrome. So the total estimated cost for the project is a little over $53 million. As I mentioned, we've had an extensive public involvement program throughout the project. We've updated public officials as we have moved forward. We have a project advisory committee that's made up of business owners, representatives from the trucking industry, also state farmers market, city staff, business owners in the area. We've had 4 meetings. We use them as a sounding board to bounce off ideas. We've had 2 public alternatives workshops where we presented all of our alternatives and got feedback from the public. We had a public information meeting back in December to present to them this alternative, our recommended alternative to date. And the last upcoming meeting we have is our public hearing that's tentatively scheduled for May. That schedule, I know, is very small. I can't hardly read it here in front of me. But all the way to the right, the yellow dot, that's actually a smiley face. That is our projected approval of the project from Florida Highway or the Federal Highway Administration this fall. And that has a public hearing date of May. The implementation plan, this is where it may get a little bit complicated. Part of the purpose of the project, as I mentioned before, was to restrict truck traffic through downtown. Not just to redirect, but to restrict. And the only way you can restrict truck traffic on a state route, especially an SIS state route, you have to divert it to another state route. You cannot divert trucks from a non-state route, from a state route to a non-state route. That is a Florida statute. I don't have the number, but that is a Florida. Also, in order to restrict truck traffic, you cannot restrict truck traffic from an SIS corridor. The only way we can restrict truck traffic on Chrome Avenue through downtown is to take Chrome Avenue south of Camel Drive off of the state highway system and take it off the SIS. So it would be transferred from the state to the county. Camel Drive has to be transferred to the state highway system in order to divert truck traffic from a state route. It has to be a state route. So Camel Drive between Chrome Avenue and US 1 would be converted from a county road to a state road. And the new SIS corridor would be Chrome Avenue to Campbell, Campbell Drive to US 1, and US 1 south. When all of this is in place, only then can you restrict trucks south of Campbell Drive and through downtown. All of this has to be put in place. Requests have to be made to the state to transfer a county road to the state. The state needs to make a request to the county to transfer a state road to the county. It all has to go through the Metropolitan Planning Organization and prioritized, and in the coordination with the central office of FDOT on the de-designation of Chrome and the designation of Camel Drive on the SIS. I know that's confusing. The main thing to remember is the only way we can restrict truck traffic, we have to de-designate and take Chrome Avenue off the state highway system south of Campbell. And the only way we can divert trucks from a state route to another roadway, it has to be on the state system. So Camel Drive has to be transferred to the state system. And that will happen. We can start that process before this study is over, but it will take several months and possibly a year or more to get all of that filtered through the system before it becomes official. And you know Dad is the official contact for this project. Any questions should be directed to him via email or by mail or telephone. That's all of his information. Thank you, and I'll be willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a chance to meet with FDOT, I guess it was a couple weeks back, because, and the main purpose was that there'd been a lot of concern from the public and from people, especially in the Northwest neighborhood, regarding the effects that the truck bypass was having on, it seemed, Chrome Avenue, as far as the 4-lane of Chrome Avenue in that area, putting medians in the middle, and I think the most controversial issue is removal of these palm trees, these iconic palm trees along the Chrome Avenue corridor that had been there for quite some time. And so I'd asked for a meeting to try to get some clarification on, was it in fact the truck bypass that was causing this effect on Chrome Avenue? Because I hadn't seen it before. That wasn't part of the discussion when it came before us. When we chose an alternative, we were informed about the roadway or the intersection improvements, but nothing about the Chrome Avenue corridor. And what I found from that conversation was that, in fact, there was actually 2 projects that were going on. One was the Chrome Avenue widening, which had already been approved or had already been gone through the process. And then there was the truck bypass. And as I understood it, The connection between the two is that the Chrome Avenue widening was supposed to take place somewhere between 2025 and 2040. The truck bypass was hoping at best to maybe take place in 2018, but because of the SIS system that you explained, in order for the truck bypass to take place, the Chrome Avenue widening also had to take place simultaneously. So it would cause that 4-laning of Chrome project that had already been discussed, approved, and gone through the process to then take place simultaneously with the truck bypass, moving it up 20-some years possibly and effectuating. And so I wanted to make sure that my colleagues and also the public had a chance to kind of hear this discussion and also weigh in on it, because I think that, as a representative from the Northwest, for a 4-laning Chrome Avenue, putting the medians in and removing those palm trees definitely changes the feel of that area of town. I mean, you essentially have US 1 now running through our neighborhood. And so I think that it's important for us to realize that we have two issues here that we're talking about. One is a truck bypass, and one is also, even if this truck bypass went away, this 4-lane of Chrome Avenue is still scheduled to take place, just in a longer-term time frame. And is that correct? Am I summarizing correctly what we discussed?
Yeah, currently, Chrome Avenue in the Miami-Dade Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO's Long-Range Transportation Plan, as a priority 4, meaning 2030, so 2025 to 2030, it's planned to be widened from 2 lanes to 4 lanes from US 1 to Avocado. That's in the plan. Now, we know through the historical area, from Lucy to 4th, most likely it never will be widened because of the historical designation of downtown. But the section from Chrome, or from Campbell to Avocado, is in the long-range plan. So that will happen if the bypass is never built, it goes away. As long as that widening is in the long-range plan, it could happen as early as 2025 or 2030, depending on the funding source.
Right.
And if it stays on the SIS, most likely the SIS gets top priority in funding. Most likely it probably would be widened much sooner than 2035.
Right. And
now,
so,
as part of our project, we're just piggybacking on that section. I mean, it's not really a recommendation of our project per se. We're taking an existing condition that exists. Now we're endorsing it and saying that the best corridor for trucks and for the increase in trucks is to widen Chrome Avenue, but that's already in the long-range plan. Our primary improvements, new improvements, are Campbell Drive.
correct. And that's why I wanted to make sure that it was kind of clarified, and plus also bring to my colleagues' attention that if this truck bypass, we have the debate about the truck bypass possibly and the changes in the 36, acquisition of 36 feet of right-of-way on the south side of Campbell is one issue in the time frame for that. But the other issue also is, do we want to address this other plan, which is not really part of the truck bypass itself and proper, but as part of a plan that was presented earlier? Is that something else that we're going to want to also look at and address? I know, again, from the northwest side, it's definitely a concern about the feel and the effects on the palm trees and the other issues like that. So it's something that we need to bring to the forefront and start discussions with FDOT to determine, is there an alternative solution? And I do know, in order to avoid those trucks coming all the way down Chrome Avenue or the truck bypass system, we would have to actually have a truck bypass that occurred north of Avocado or north. That would be the only way to guarantee that four-laning would not necessarily take place or be needed south of Avocado. That would be the only way that would take place. Is that correct also?
That's correct.
Okay. And I just wanted to make sure I kind of clarified and laid the groundwork for everyone to understand kind of where we were and point out the highlights of the issues and see if any of you guys have any questions or comments.
Anyone? Ms. Waldman?
Hello. We've met before. So, Vice Mayor, thank you. I'm just still a little confused. So you're saying that in order to, how many years would it take in order to ask the state to designate Chrome Avenue from Campbell Drive to Lucy as a non-state road, non-state entity?
Well, we've been told probably 12 months, 12.
That's just to
I mean,
ask?
it would not be something that would delay. I mean, there's a lot of other things that would take much longer before the truck bypass is open. That actual process could take 12 months because it's not only, it has to be a request from the county to the state requesting that Chrome Avenue be transferred to the state, and of course the state will accept. And it just takes paperwork, a public hearing, and the whole process takes 12, 14 months.
So you're saying we'd have to go to the county, and then the county would go to the state?
Yeah,
Is that right, Vice Mayor? Is that what you're saying?
the county would make an official request to the state secretary, District 6 secretary, to transfer Chrome Avenue, State Road 997, limits US 1 to Camel Drive from the state highway system to the county's highway system.
Okay, but then I believe I heard you say that in order to do that, then Campbell Drive would have to become a state road?
Yes, because the only way the state would agree to transfer Chrome Avenue to the county would be if there's somewhere else to put the trucks. And you can't transfer trucks from a state route to a non-state route. It's a Florida statute. It's against, I guess, against the law, and they do not allow transferring truck traffic to a non-state route. So the only way we can transfer trucks from Chrome is designate whatever roadway connects to the state highway
Okay.
system.
So I'm maybe redundant, but I just want to make sure I understand. Excuse me. So you would have the process, which would take about a year to go through the county, town hearings, whatever, to go to the state. And then once you get to the state, how long does it usually take for those two designations, just not those particular, but two designations at the same time to be granted?
Well, we would do the applications all at once, meaning the de-designation, the designation, the transfers could all be done at the same time. They have to go through the MPO. The MPO has to actually vote and approve the state. So that whole process is 12 to 14, 16 months just to do the policy changes. So that would be everything.
So we've never tried to do this before? We've never tried to get that road designated as a non-state road and Campbell as a state road?
Not to my knowledge, because the only way that you could make that request, you would have to have an alternative to why that would be viable to the state. And it's on the SIS network, and the only way to take it off the SIS network, you can't stop the SIS corridor at Campbell. You have to get it over to another SIS network because it has to connect. And if we bring it to Campbell, Campbell will become the connection, and US 1 will be designated. Right now, US 1 is not on the SIS network. It ends where Chrome connects to US 1. That will be extended up to Campbell. So it's better to look at this on a drawing, but the nice map would be Chrome, Campbell to US 1 South would be the SIS corridor. Everything's nice and neat and connected, and then everything south of Campbell on Chrome would be taken off the SIS and the state highway system.
And I understand that. What I'm trying to do here is, because this is something we've been talking about decades, or a decade and a half, and you know, I'm trying to find out a timeline as to what, because what you're presenting to us tonight is going to maybe affect some of our discussion later on in the evening as to our downtown area. So I remember Mr. Burgess in the last meeting even suggesting doing some speed bumps and turnarounds, trying to divert the trucks off. And if I'm not mistaken, it was said that it would take years and years to make that happen. I want to say the years, like 7 years comes to mind. So, you know, I'm just trying to get an idea, a timeline as to what these people in the downtown can expect and what we can expect as the leaders of the community to make very, very important decisions. And it's all the talk is always centered around, well, when those trucks get off Chrome Avenue. But, you know, we need, I'm not going to speak, but I need to know realistically, because as I remember, we've had this conversation for years and years, and I was told 7, 8, 9 years at one time.
Well,
And we haven't even started. We haven't even, I mean, we've got the plan, but we haven't even started to ask what we can do to change it.
one thing we never had is a consensus of one alternative. If this alternative is one that we can go forward with, and we get endorsement, and we can finish this project, meaning the PD&E, because nothing can happen until we get FHWA approval. They're not going to start the process until they know they have a project. And
Okay,
we
so
don't
now,
know we have a project until we have an alternative.
so now you have the plan, but when you talk about, how many feet was it you were talking about taking off of Campbell Drive? 36 feet? Has an engineer checked that out? Because I just don't see how that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's 12 property owners. That's why we chose the south side.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't
Mr.
hear
Easley,
you.
you need to speak more into the microphone,
I'm
please.
sorry.
We can't hear you.
We can take 36 feet south of the existing sidewalk. With that widening, we have one, what we're calling a total right-of-way take. The Capital Bank. The rest of the properties will not be, there'll be partial right-of-way. We can replace any parking that's missing. The parking that's being impacted can be moved back 5 feet. The one service station will have to relocate a canopy for the pumps, and the pumps will have to be relocated. But all of that can be done, and we have checked, we have developed concept plans that show that,
Who pays
and
for
it can
that?
be done.
Who pays for that? Who pays to have that gas station's tanks moved? Because I'm in real estate, and I just dealt with a gas station, and,
FDOT will pay for that.
okay, because it's expensive.
Yeah, FDOT will pay relocation, pay right-of-way costs for right-of-way, and anything that we have to do to get parking back will be paid for by FDOT. Anything we have to do to resolve any impacts that we cause that are permanent to any businesses along the area, we will fix. Now, we're estimating if we finish and get approval in the fall of 2014, that construction can begin. Now, no funds are identified, but again, it's an SIS corridor. They get top priority in funding. There's funding available that's not available for other projects that can be used for this. If it gets momentum, we have a corridor. We're hoping construction can start by 2018, 2019, and take a couple years. Our opening year in our analysis is 2020. 2020 to 2022. So we're looking at 6 years, 6 to 7 years to be open to traffic. You got to consider 24 months to 30 months for right-of-way acquisition. And that's a process we can't speed up. We can
So-
speed up everything else, but that's one that we can't.
So if I still have the floor, Mayor, so I was correct then that afterwards it would take approximately seven years or more.
Yes.
As we do the math. So we're looking at realistically, I can't even think that far ahead, 2022? 2022 before realistically the downtown would be truck-free if the governor at that time signs off on it.
Now, the governor, it would be the Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highway Administration would
Okay.
approve, and they will approve it unless they see a reason not to. And a reason not to would be if there's public opposition or there's no endorsement by the local municipality.
Okay.
But anything, as long as it makes economical sense and there's no undue
Well-
impacts, then it should be approved. I'm sorry. I
Well,
can't-
thank you, and thank
Not
you,
talking
Mayor.
anymore.
I just wanted to get a timeline in my little world, because we've been dealing with this forever.
Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mayor. Most of my questions were answered because 36 foot, that's the first time that number popped up in my head tonight for some reason. I'm sure you've spoken it many a times, and as we've gone through this, this is probably the fifth time that I've seen you here giving presentations on different things. And that was one of the things that caught my attention and concerned me tonight, because 36 feet puts us, I imagine you couldn't be more than 6 or 8 feet from the door of the post office, the chicken franchise, the burger franchise, the other strip malls. Well, the funeral home's on the north side, so you wouldn't be with that. So I just wanted to, just wondering how we go about having the federal government to relocate a post office, because there's no way really to reconfigure that over there. And you, 36 feet would take most of their parking away, so I don't know.
Well,
I look
the best
forward.
thing to do is we need to let you look at our plans and see. I mean, it sounds worse than it is.
Right, I mean, and that.
I mean, we've
obviously-
looked at every, we're not impacting the post office, we're not impacting the big lots, we're not impacting the Firestone. Yes, we are encroaching a little bit on the parking that's right adjacent to the sidewalk.
Okay.
But that parking can be shifted back 2 feet. The major impact is at the intersection of Campbell, because we're having to really widen that
Widen it,
out,
right.
so make sure that works.
Yeah.
Is the
And
Capitol
that was
Bank
one of my
building.
concerns when we spoke last time. How were we going to widen that, and what would be lost, and what would be, you know, what's the gain with the loss? So, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Patricia?
Do you have any of those, one quick comment. Do you have any of those drawings with you this evening?
I do not, I apologize.
thank you.
But we can get you a big
Yeah.
set, and you can take a look at it, and then we can meet again and talk about it, but
Just 1 second. I was just going to ask the same thing with the map. If the quicker that we could see that, I think it's going to make sense for us to see it, visual.
Ms. Fairclough?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My concern with with the proposed route is, have we taken into consideration the traffic that's already on Campbell Drive? It's almost as if you're in a chokehold driving on Campbell Drive around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Coming from the east side, it takes me minimally 25 to 30 minutes just to get over here. And if we put the trucks onto Campbell Drive, it's going to be a nightmare. And to think of the new prospective homeowners that are moving to the city of Homestead from Kendall, they're moving here to get away from the traffic and the congestion. And then coming to Homestead is running right back into that congestion. So I have grave concerns about going onto Campbell Drive.
well, one thing that, and of course, I mean, that's, traffic is one of the primary areas that we pay attention to. And you have to understand that the majority of the trucks, and we've done video surveys, we've interviewed trucking companies, we've interviewed the farmers market to try to get a feel for when are the trucks the worst. And trucks avoid the peak hour of regular traffic. Most of the big trucks they're coming to the farmers market between 6 and 7 a.m., and they leave, a lot of them, late at night. So based on our traffic analysis, we're going to add to Campbell Drive during the peak periods from 6 to 9 in the morning, or 7 to 9 in the morning, or 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, or 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the afternoon when traffic is the worst. We're going to add maybe 12 trucks total during that time to Campbell Drive. And you have to picture Campbell Drive with wider lanes. Now it's choked because of the 9-foot lanes. Even in a pickup truck, 2 pickup trucks have to really slow down. They're going to be 12-foot lanes, 15.5-foot median. You're going to have a 4-foot bike lane on the outside. When there's not a bike in it, you actually have an 18-foot outside lane. So you're going to have a lot of space that will improve traffic congestion just by that. And we're looking at it not just a truck bypass, because I'm sure there's a lot of local residents or people that's driving through on a weekend or driving through during that rush hour that wants to bypass downtown. They can use Campbell Drive and go around. But our traffic analyses are showing that the trucks do not change the level of service on Campbell Drive. In fact, they're only adding 12, maybe 13, and that's in both directions. That's 6 in one direction and 6 in the other direction. So if you picture 6 more trucks going eastbound and 6 more trucks coming westbound during the worst traffic times, That's why we don't expect diverting trucks from Chrome to Campbell to really impact the traffic during the worst periods on Campbell.
Anything else? A couple of questions. What kind of impact would we see, or if there is any pushback from MPO as far as changing the whole concept? Because you talk about political obstruction of this process since 1993, because I know we had political consensus in 97 and lost it, and then we had it again in 2005 and lost it because the political winds change. You're talking about a 7-year build-out. The political, how long is that window of change? Because I know that we have to approach MPO. They're part of this process. What if they say no to this process politically?
Well, the MPO, yeah, I mean, the city of Homestead is on the MPO, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you have a vote, and I would expect the county commissioner for this area to respect your vote if the locals want something. And I don't think the MPO would cancel the project as long as it gets local support. We've been in a situation where we've recommended alternatives that the school board did not like. Now, they have a vote as well. And that was a situation where if the school board's against it and it's perceived as having impacts to children and school children, that could possibly kill the project.
Okay.
But as long as there's local support, meaning the city, if the city supports this alternative, we do not have to get approval from the MPO to finish this project. The MPO will have to give approval. Now, we're going to present to the MPO, but it's just an informational discussion item next week. But since we're consistent with the long-range transportation plan, we don't have to have an amendment. So as long as we don't have to amend the long-range plan, which the MPO is in charge of, we do not have to get a vote from the MPO. So if the city endorses the project, now the MPO will be involved, they have to approve the transfer,
Right.
but that's a formality when it gets to that point, the transfer of state roads. As long as FDOT says, yes, we're fine, we'll take over Campbell, as long as the county says, we're fine, we'll take over Chrome, so that'll go through. So as long as we get local support and the MPO, I think will go along this time to get this project to go forward.
One other question, with regards to all the transfers of roads, so to speak, what happens to the area in the historic district? Does that get transferred to the city? Would that get transferred to the city between 4th and Maury would it become part of access to something that we would control
I
locally?
mean, the city, who maintains Chrome Avenue south of Campbell? Who maintains Chrome Avenue? The county?
I've always thought it was a state road. I don't know. Somebody else would have to.
I'm sorry. Okay, so
You need to talk to the microphone. I'm sorry. What-
no, it's a state, oh, I'm sorry. Forget it. If it's transferred from the state, off the state highway system to the county, then the county and the city can work out who's in charge. I mean, I'm sure the county will give the city from 4th to Flagler, from Campbell to your city limits. I don't think that will be an issue.
Well, my point was somewhat like they do in Key West. They can bollard Duval and have their street part. We have to ask permission currently to do this through the state, is my understanding. So if everybody's going to get a transfer of ownership of rights of way, if you want to call it, it would be nice for us to be able to have access to Chrome Avenue.
I would think that could happen, and if it's not on the state highway system and the city controls, you can do anything with Chrome you want to after that.
One thing that is concerning, at the end of the day, you go back to 1993 when this began, 97, it goes on and on and on. We've been at the top of the list at least 2 times that I know of, and we lost consensus and we go to the bottom of the list, funding and across the board. What I would hope that we could take a look at is the little problems that we have, if it's some of the curbing and cut-throughs on Chrome, if it's the trees, the placement of the palm trees, the relocation of the palm trees, let's address that. But at the end of the day, no matter what we do, we're still going to have 4 lanes of traffic coming into Homestead, ending up on 4th Street, going into a 2-lane historic district with cobblestone, traffic calming, and pedestrian efforts to try to deal with. And if we had the improvement, I don't see this as just a truck route. I've always seen this as an alternate route for traffic to be diverted around the historic district. At some point in time, we're not going to be able to handle that through that historic district. There's no widening between south of 4th Street, no improvements south of 4th Street. It's all going to funnel into that two lanes. So what I would like for us as a group and our community as a group to pick the issues that we have problems with, and I think one of the biggest ones is how it affects the look of the loss of the palm trees. There's been a lot of effort over many years to keep those palm trees. We've lost some after Andrew, we put them back. We lost some to disease, we put them back. I think that's a very important aspect. But at the end of the day, 2025, 2030, 4 lanes are still going to come through. This whole project is still going to be what it's going to be. But we're almost at that time frame now with the construction of this bypass in 2022. So we're not that far off of all this happening to us anyway. But the sooner we get some sort of relief for downtown and some sort of an idea of how we're going to be able to get the overflow of traffic. Chrome Avenue is backed up all the way through Homestead right now. We've got to find some way to have a relief valve, and Campbell is undersized, like you said, not enough room for 2 pickups. You have to stagger going through Campbell Drive because you can't, get your mirror knocked off. So I would hope that we would, try to coalesce around the concept that it can't move anymore. We're not going to get anything if we don't do something relatively quick. We're not going to get anything, and we're going to lose another 10 or 15 or 20 years. So let's focus on the issues that give us problems as a community. All of us know who wants to see resolutions to certain things. So what is it with the palm trees? I know we lose because you have to go out to pick, you're going to lose on-street parking. I don't think that's necessarily a huge issue for most people. I don't see a lot of pushback there. Well, we see a lot of pushback is palm trees. So if you had a solution for palm trees, what would you suggest right now?
Now, we understand those palm trees are beautiful along there, and unfortunately where they're located, right behind the curb, most of them have grown, they're right behind the curb, and we're widening 6 feet on each side. We're not going to destroy any of the palm trees. We're going to try to preserve or relocate back within the corridor as many of them as we can. I'm hoping we can at least, we won't be able to place them every 10 or 15 feet that they are now, but we can relocate in areas. And again, this will have to be a commitment for the project. I mean, we have a list of commitments that we must abide by when we end this project. That will be a commitment that the royal palms will be preserved as much as possible within the corridor. At the time final design starts, when we actually sharpen the pencils and we start looking at exactly where that right-of-way line needs to be, can we take another 2 feet or 3 feet? Do we have any of the areas along there that would not cause impact to plant the trees, and look at areas that we can replant? The median, we thought about the median. The median is really not good because you have a clear zone issue, you have maintenance issues, the fronds fall in the street. So that's really not something that we would recommend. But there will be opportunities along the corridor to replant those same trees between Campbell and Avocado.
Okay, you said not recommend, but is a not a recommend is a denial?
No.
Okay.
meeting.
One other thing that I think Vice Mayor Shelley and other comments that we received with the trees, and we've looked at it since the meeting, and some opportunities I think we've also discussed with staff is, with the 4-foot bicycle lanes. One other thing is the city can actually designate a parallel route as a designated bicycle path route, and that would, because there's only 3 ways that you can not have bicycle routes within the state road system. It's again the alternate route, the lack of use, or safety. So one of the things again is if we can get a designated parallel route on for a bicycle path and connect it to Campbell, because we would still probably most likely have to widen the Campbell, but along the Chrome Avenue, I think there's several streets that parallels Chrome Avenue, and if we can get a parallel route, then we would be able to at least reduce that 4 foot on both sides, and be able to maintain most of the trees. The other thing that we talked about is other exceptions. I mean, the 15.5-foot median is already an exception to our regular standards. The standards are 17 feet, 19.5 feet for the SIS. So we are already trying to accommodate and get an exception by going down to the 15.5 feet from the 19 feet. There's other means, but we're going to try to our best extent, the maximum extent possible to try to maintain those trees.
Well, that was one of the other questions, is who's responsible for the rules of the SIS? Obviously, that you are. So there's some flexibility that you have within your own guidelines to make some recommendations for changes. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, just to chime in, I mean, I think the biggest concern, at least from the northwest side point of view, is that, definitely the trees are a big issue, the medians are a big issue, because the access, being able to access across the roadways from one to another, because it is, you essentially have Chrome Avenue running between 2 neighborhoods as you enter Homestead, and then as you get farther or closer to Campbell, it becomes more business oriented. But at that top portion, it is very much so, almost cutting through the middle of a residential area. So I think that, even the 4-laning to some extent has been somewhat problematic. I agree that we need to coalesce around an idea. I'm a big supporter of downtown, so I want to find a way to get these trucks off Chrome Avenue, to get downtown, a walkable downtown. But at the same time, I don't want to sacrifice the feel of a neighborhood that's been there for, as long as Homestead's been there. It's an old part of Homestead. And the widening of those roads is going to cut right up almost to the businesses as you get to Campbell Drive. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of that walkaway space and sidewalk, and just the whole feel of what you would normally encounter in that area is going to change. And so really the goal tonight was to bring that to the attention of my colleagues, but also to allow the public that's here to hear about it, because many of them haven't been following it, aren't aware. This is the first time they're hearing of it. And so I think it'd be good to maybe have some meetings with the neighbors, maybe have a public meeting that we set up maybe here at the community center, and get the notice out to those in the Northwest to get their feedback, just like the mayor had stated, and try to find some common ground, something that we can all agree on, so that maybe we don't stop this project, but we can find something that the residents are happy with, dealing with the trees, the medians and everything in between, and just get a little more feedback on that, as we move forward down this path. So that's all I would ask, is that we maybe have at least another public hearing specifically focusing on that neighborhood and those neighborhoods and getting their feedback directly.
Yeah, anything that we can do to advance the project, we're willing to do. So,
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Mr. Ellis.
Just a question. Have we, here in the city, have we had anyone attending these meetings with the DOT when they're presenting, when they're having the public meetings, asking the public to come to the meetings and have a discussion? I know that there's been a few, and I'm not sure who up here has attended. I know I've not been able to. I think Councilman Shelley has, because, how close this affects his community. So the question is, and maybe I could direct this to the manager, maybe should we have someone from the city as well reporting over there, taking notes, finding out what's concerned the residents, because maybe they're voiced out there, but, we don't know about it.
Sure.
Until, we're coming to these meetings. So just a suggestion maybe that we have someone out there, and then any future meetings.
The one thing they're going to need tonight is they have that meeting coming up, and they're going to need to know where they stand to figure out, what to tell the board, because your meeting is when?
well, the MPO meets next Thursday.
Right, so that's going to be the big question for them is, do you want to postpone that another month? How do you want to work that so that there's no cross messages here? Because if in fact you think there's a possibility of some compromise where they can walk in with some sort of consensus from the community, that might be better than them going to that meeting, and it's going to be a big controversial meeting, I think, without some direction from the local community.
Well, part of the problem I had with the public process, it was like December the 20th when they had a public hearing, which is kind of, everybody's kind of in the Christmas shopping mode and not in the you know, DOT mode, so to speak. So I don't know how much, but for the fact that this has been going on since 1993, you know, I don't know. We've got to get more information out to the community, because as soon as the palm trees were gone, seems like the lights went off. It just seemed to me that that was the switch came on, and all of a sudden we're not going to have palm trees on Chrome Avenue anymore, and everybody became awake. So they're awake. Now's the time I think we've got to figure out how to explain to them that this is no new project. This is going to happen anyway. If we can get some concessions from you as, like you said tonight, the bike paths, you know, why would you want to have a bike path right next to an 18-wheeler anyway? So it makes more sense to move that to another location. If we have the ability to shrink that median just a little bit, it's a historic community, you know, and again, there's got to be some flexibility in the rules that you can bring to us, that we can, you know, that we can endorse and see that it's going to be intrusive to some degree, but everything is intrusive as we go forward and as we grow and as we get bigger. But if we could minimize it as much as possible, realizing that the key elements, as the Vice Mayor said, can we have some additional looks at the cut-throughs? Can we have some additional looks at, you know, the palm trees? So that's all I'm saying is we need to work with our community, get that information out to them, realizing, and let them realize that to a large degree this is coming. If we can get at the table right now and manipulate it a little bit with your assistance, realizing that if we come forward with some realistic discussions, because it's not going to go anywhere else. That's the thing that, so, you know, we keep thinking that we're going to move it someplace else. Unfortunately, since 1993, we've been looking for someplace else to put it. And it's one of those things, not in my backyard, nobody wants it, but the affected area is our historic district and our downtown, so it's really going to be our responsibility to try to figure out how to make it work.
Mayor, if I could, if it's the consensus of the council, we can invite them to come back and meet with the staff, try to set some parameters, and then do some community outreach. We'll work with you all in your offices and try to get them out and try to come up with some compromises if we can, if that's the consensus of the group.
I'm all in favor, so, you okay?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that let's get a community as a whole involved. I know it's the northwest section is being affected by this, but this is something that's going to affect the community as a whole.
Absolutely.
Because we talk about rebuilding the downtown area, and we want to make some changes, and these are the changes that the only options we have as of right now. And so, like the mayor was saying, we need to come to that.
The one concern I have, which I've discussed with them before, which really hasn't changed much, is that we have a much shorter term problem that needs to be resolved, not in a Politburo 10-year plan. And the problem is we haven't heard anything yet that solves our immediate problems. So I'm hoping as part of this new dialogue what we have with them, I also asked our city attorney if maybe he could come up with some ideas as well as some short-term solution, because as we talk tonight, and we're going to talk at length about the downtown revitalization, this thing just doesn't work for us. I mean, it might work 10 years from now once they get through this system, but the truth is the government is failing us right now, and that they're not solving a problem that we have. And it's nice they have their own system and their rules, and I get it, I understand, but I also understand that that doesn't meet our needs. So I think we need to have that discussion with them again. I think at some point they thought this had been resolved and there was consensus, but like you mentioned, once the tree issue came up, I think everybody got some re-energized on, geez, I wonder if this is the best way to do this. I just don't want to see them go to the MPO and then it ends up where everything dies. So we're going to have to coordinate with them and try to communicate with the MPO as well so that they understand that there's a little more process ahead of us before they make any decisions.
And again, the council has allowed me to be the representative at the MPO, so my plan is to be there for the discussion, if there is a discussion, hopefully we would try to get it deferred so that we could build our consensus locally to give clear direction to the MPO. Because I know there could be dissenting factors at the MPO. We want to coalesce around the best we can possibly get. Yes, sir.
Do we have a timeline on when that discussion is supposed to happen? Is it okay if we're going to defer it, or would you be able to tell us if you're going to have any issues in light of what we're hearing today? I know because do you have a time set already that you're going to meet with the MPO?
The MPO meeting, the regular MPO meeting is scheduled for the 20th, which I believe that's next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Well,
And it's a discussion item. It was put on the agenda by Commissioner Bell.
Mm-hmm.
She can defer it one more month. I don't see that as an issue.
Okay.
It was on the agenda last MPO, and there wasn't a quorum, so it automatically just was not heard. So if there's a quorum, what we should do is request a deferral at that level to give us an opportunity to, again, coalesce around some ideas.
Sure.
And one thing I want to add, we had a public meeting. We invited everyone within 300 feet of Chrome on both sides, all the way up to Avocado. We did not have a turnout that we had wanted. We had maybe 10 people, but it only takes one. The comments we received, impacts to the palm trees, the median, and the right-of-way acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
So we only have to hear it once. If you have 10 people that say the same thing, it really doesn't make it any more stronger to us. So we know the issues are the palm trees, the median, and the right-of-way impacts. And we're going to do everything we can to minimize that. Now, the median width is probably as narrow as we can get it, because if you get it any more narrow, you can't do a U-turn. Even at 15 and a half, cars have a hard time making a U-turn without going up on the sidewalk. So that's what dictates that. Now, the bike lanes, if we can get rid of the bike lanes, that would help us a lot. But Chrome is on the North Dade Greenway plan. And that's a master plan that was done by the county, and they're going to have bike lanes all the way from Okeechobee Road all the way down through. And if we can provide some kind of connection, because they're going to have a path up to Avocado, so if somehow we can get a connection from that path, maybe down Avocado into a side street over to Campbell, then that will give us 8 feet.
We've done that exercise in one of these studies before. That alternate bike route has been pretty much looked at. So we're not that far behind. We just gotta. This body, there's some new people and there's some old people like myself, but we've got to gravitate towards something that we can hold on to long enough to get this project built, because we've got to have this. So.
Sure.
Anything
Absolutely.
else?
No, we'll get right on it.
John, did you want to say anything? I'm sorry.
You'd reach out to Commissioner Bell and ask her ahead of time about a deferral or whatever, instead of, everybody having to go down there, travel there, if they're not scheduled to be there or whatever.
Yeah, I can't because of sunshine.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the last meeting, I did reach out to Commissioner Bell and ask for the deferral so that we could have this particular meeting, and she agreed to defer at the last meeting. It may be good if we as a body ask for this deferral versus one of us individually. So I think that if that's the will of the whole body, that maybe we should take some sort of, symbolic vote, and then we can have the city manager reach out and ask on our behalf.
Yeah, she was very cooperative for the last deferral, but I think it would be helpful to have the whole council weigh in on that request. And if you're all in favor of that, we'll call her and tell her that you all asked for a deferral.
Is anyone opposed to asking Commissioner Bell for a deferral? Okay, you got it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Easley, thank you. Thank you very much for... Okay, so we're going to move on to tab 2. Tab 2. No, tab 2. No, tab 2, really. Mr. Manager, tab 2.
Okay, we're just going to need to get the clicker, and we should all be ready. Okay. Thank you. Okay, you all ready for the fun now? Ready? Okay. That was not the fun. The fun is coming. As you can see from this picture, this is kind of a depiction of the kind of material that the mayor and council all received on several of the issues that we're about to discuss with you tonight. Now, even though this is going to look like one giant long presentation, it's actually 3 presentations. The first one is going to be Julio, who's going to discuss the contamination in the police headquarters and some of the concerns about moving out the building and finding alternative locations. The second part is going to be Carlos, who's going to talk a little bit about some of our major capital projects and some of our financing options. And third will be, I'll wrap up with some issues about downtown. Now, I'm hoping we can get through this without some snoozing. And I don't know why anybody would snooze, because we got an engineer and an accountant coming up to do presentations. But if there's any snoozing, I would suggest Carlos's segment of the snoozing would be fine. Challenges. What you're going to see, and I'm hoping we don't get into the doom and gloom here, because what you're about to see is some significant problems that we have facing us. And unfortunately, every solution that we offer here, every option that we offer, there really isn't any perfect solution. They're expensive options, they're cumbersome, and they're complicated. But I'm hoping by the time we get through this tonight that you'll all look at these as not just problems, but opportunities to really make a difference in the city and make a real impact on the future of Homestead. So with that, I will start off with Julio, who will talk about contamination.
Thank you, George. As Georgia warned you, this could be rather painful, but I have to apologize. There is no cure for boring engineering presentations, so I'll give it a best shot. Here we go. So, okay, so where do we start? We started a while back with City Hall. There were some concerns by employees that there was some issues regarding safety and health, so we went ahead and tested the City Hall building. And what did that tell us? It told us that there was radon and mold. So, of course, the first thing we did is make sure that the employees were safe, and we moved them out to a temporary location. So what did this trigger? This triggered, it opened our eyes, and we said, well, we need to make sure that all the other buildings are safe, or if not, we need to make sure that we take action regarding those buildings as well. So we went ahead and tested every building that the city owns, again, for radon, to make sure that we didn't have the same issues that we had at the City Hall building. And what did that tell us? That the police building has radon contamination. So as a result of that initial screening, we went ahead and we did an extensive analysis of the building to make sure that there weren't other issues as well regarding the police building, that if it was radon, maybe there were some other issues as well. So we went ahead and we conducted a series of 9 different environmental and occupancy assessment analysis of the building. We did everything from radon, mold, asbestos, lead, and ADA compliance. We did it all basically to make sure that whatever the issues were with the police building, that we will be able to handle them. And for that, we used certain consultants. We used, for environmental consultant, we used EnviroTeam North America. They're the same people that did the test at City Hall when they found the original results of radon and other environmental issues. They have 39 years experience. They're certified with state and the federal government regarding all sorts of this type of testing, so they're very well versed in this situation. And we also use a construction consultant. We use Rodriguez Quiroga, which are the architects that did the design for City Hall. Again, they're very experienced with these type of buildings, and we wanted to make sure that we used somebody that was familiar with the city as a whole. So, what are the immediate problems that we found? Let's take a look at that. The first problem was that there's radon. We knew that already from the initial test, but we did some additional testing to verify that. And basically, first, what is radon? Radon is basically, it's a naturally occurring radioactive substance that is in the ground, and it's leaching all the time. It's around us all the time. What matters is the concentration that radon has around us, basically. So how does it get into a building? Basically through cracks, through penetrations of the slabs, etc. So it travels inside buildings, and what makes it dangerous is the fact that when it's in a building, it's concentrated, and it's not dissipated by the wind or etc. So we know we got radon. How does radon affect us? So basically what it does, it increases the risk of developing lung cancer. Plain and simple, it's the second leading cause of lung cancer right after smoking. And when you compare it to other types of deaths, this graph here shows basically the comparison of radon deaths as compared to things like drunk driving, falls in the homes, drownings, etc. It's the number one of all of those. And it's responsible for about 21,000 lung cancer deaths every year. Also, we got to keep in mind what makes radon dangerous. Well, basically, like I said previously, it's a concentration. The length of time that you're exposed to it and the concentration that you're actually breathing. Even a small amount of increase of radon through a long period of time could have major effects on your health. And the risk increases, of course, the longer your exposure is. So how do they measure radon? What do the results really mean? So basically, the EPA has a standard that they follow, and this is based on empirical analysis that they've done through the years. And what they do is they know that the normal levels found in the air around us is 0.4 picocuries. Picocuries is basically 1/trillionth of a curie, and a curie is a measurement. It's a measurement of radioactive activity of a substance. Basically, is what it is. Radioactive decay of a substance. You don't want me to go into any further detail because you'll really fall asleep. But anyways, the average indoor radon level, according to EPA, is 1.3. That's what they measured throughout the United States, and that's what they consider to be an average concentration level of radon in the US of A. Now, what they consider a level that needs to be some action taken is at 4.0. When you reach 4.0 picocuries, that's when you need to do something about it. That's when the EPA considers that is a dangerous level which requires action. So what do? The first test that we did in radon, we placed 62 sample ports throughout the police building, and out of those, 53 of them came back with levels higher than 4.0. Basically from 4.1 to 5.9, which is approximately 5 times the average radon level that EPA considers. So we went ahead and did a second test. This one was to verify that the first one was properly done, and also to make sure that it wasn't a one in a lifetime event that caused that radon level to be so high. So we performed another test, and that test, we placed 61 ports at that time, and out of those 61, 50 of them came back at a higher level than 4.0. And they were registering as high as 5.8, again, close to 6 times the average. So then we did a third test. This one is probably the most important one because it's a long-range test. The other ones give us a little piece of information for a window of time. This one, we leave them there for 6 months, and for 90 days, and basically see what the concentrations, the average concentrations of radon are throughout that time. So we put 10 ports of these long-range, what they call alpha track analysis ports, and all 10 of them came back with high radon levels of basically 6.2 picocuries per liter. Again, 6 times the average. So that was the first problem that we had. The second problem that we saw was the HVAC. Usually when you have radon issues in a building, it's because you're concentrating these gases inside of a building and they're not being expelled out of the building. So what we tried to do is to see if we improve the HVAC system of the building, we would make sure that we could reduce the radon level, if that worked, and also address some other issues, which we'll talk about now. carbon dioxide. When we did the study to analyze the HVAC, we took some samples of carbon dioxide and we realized that the results basically told us that the carbon dioxide levels inside the building were higher than what's acceptable by the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers Society, which is basically they're the ones that set up the standards when it comes to HVAC and air conditioning systems in a building. So those came up high, so we needed to do some corrective action to make sure we took care of this item. And by taking care of this item, we thought that maybe we would impact the radon issue in a positive manner as well by improving the circulation of air. So we did some modifications to the HVAC system, and we found that we did correct the carbon dioxide levels, improved immediately and went below the maximum, so that was good, but it didn't impact the radon results at all. The radon remained high. And also, these improvements, by adding now air from the outside with the high moisture level, etc., it created some other issues, which what it did is basically increase the capacity of mold to grow inside the building. So by trying to attack one issue, we were impacting another in a negative fashion. This is a picture actually of some of the panels that are part of the air handling unit at the police building. As you can see, the mold growth all over the panel here. And there's also, according to the engineers that did the study, suspect microbial contamination as well. Here's a picture of the air handling motor in the same area, again showing mold growth and possible microbial contamination. Here you see, again, possible mold and the same issues as the other one. So it's prevalent throughout the building. Here's another one, another picture of carpet areas in the building, showing water stains, moisture coming into the building, and they also found mold growth in the carpet as well. So that's the second problem. The third problem that we had is this building was built in 1910, and as such, you know, the standards of construction were different than they are now. Now FEMA has what they call standards for critical facilities. And what that is, and I'll read the definition that FEMA, how they define a critical facility, is any man-made structure that, because of this function, size, service area, uniqueness, have the potential to cause serious bodily harm, extensive property damage, or disruption of vital socioeconomic activities if they are destroyed, damaged, or their functionality is impaired. In other words, a police building. And also, the American Society of Civil Engineers, they classify police stations as Category 4, which is the highest classification when it comes to critical facilities. So these are some pictures that illustrate the extent of modifications and deficiencies that the building has through the years of modification, construction, etc. since 1910. These are some penetrations of some slabs. Here you have the windows. This picture, basically, if you read the warning sign, I'll read it for you because I don't think you can read it from the screen, but it says this product is not an approved hurricane protection device and may become a hazard and must be removed from the wall if the wind velocities exceed 75 miles per hour. And we know, we see that, we've seen that quite a few times. So there's issues with the hurricane envelope protection of the building. Here, this is an example of what happens when you have a building that's been modified throughout the years. What this is basically, it's kind of hard to tell from the picture, but it's multiple ceilings put one on top of the other as modifications were done from previous construction periods as the building grew in size to try to meet the capacity. Here's a picture of the roofing material is bubbling, there's cracks, and it's allowing water to enter the building. The water drains are clogged and they're not operating properly, and also there's cracks and leaks throughout. Here you see some pictures of penetrations of walls that are not sealed, again allowing moisture into the building, increasing mold, etc., and other issues. Water damage in some of the structures. This is in the second floor, and it shows water damage that is happening from roof leaks. Broken tiles. This one is a picture taken from below of the roof joists, and basically you see water stains between the joints, which means that water is getting through the roofing material and into the building itself, again increasing the moisture and allowing mold to grow at a rapid pace. Horizontal cracks outside, stucco cracked, horizontal cracks. The scuppers are covered because they were staining against the wall, so it's making the water pool on the roof. And also, so now going to the fourth problem, ADA compliance. Again, harping on this building being built in 1910 and not necessarily being a police, designed for police operations, for a government building. We noticed that, and the architects that did the study identified a lot of issues regarding ADA compliance, Americans with Disabilities Act. Here's pictures of the bathrooms showing not enough clearance, no handrails, not meeting ADA compliance. Clear paths through doorways, flaps and turning radius not being wide enough for allowing for wheelchairs, etc., to be able to navigate the hallways. So if we went ahead and try to fix all these problems, one thing we have to keep in mind is that that would also create other issues that we need to take care of. It would trigger other conditions that we would have to take care of, such as we would have to add an elevator to the building to meet ADA compliance. We would have to have bathrooms on the second floor, and also the extent of all these repairs would trigger the building to have to come up to today's building code standards, which would mean that basically the whole building would have to be redone to meet our code as of now. So, okay, we know we have a problem with the police building, and what do we need to do? Well, the plan of action is we need to get the police department out of that location and find a temporary location for them. So the short-term options. We know we need to get them to a temporary location, regardless of whether we decide to fix the existing building or move them to another site, another remote site that would need to be prepared for them. We will still need to get them out of the building, because every day that they're in that building, they're breathing radon and they're exposed to mold, etc. So first, our first task was basically figure out, okay, what are the minimum requirements that the police would need on a temporary basis to make sure that we could move them out as fast as possible and then take care of a long-term solution for them. And we looked at issues such as square footage, parking availability, whether or not the buildings had generators, whether or not there was facilities for transportation of prisoners in and out of the building in a safe fashion, and many other issues. But we looked at a whole gamut of criteria, basically, to figure out what we need to do. So we put together a spreadsheet. I know you can't read the spreadsheet. I'm not going to be testing you later on, so don't worry. But basically what we did is we hired a consulting real estate firm to identify all the locations within city limits that would come close in some fashion to meet the requirements of a police operation. They identified 9 sites within the city limits. Of those 8 sites. Of those 8 sites, 3 of them actually met the square footage criteria, which we're looking at approximately 60,000 square feet of space. So we focused on those because the other ones, if we did use the other locations, they would have to be used in combination, and that would impact the efficiency of operations, and it would also increase in cost because now you're fixing 2 buildings instead of just 1. So these are the 3 options that meet that minimum capacity requirements. We have the baseball stadium, we have the existing building at Maury Drive and West 10th Avenue, which, by the way, we just found out that they're in a lease negotiation now for a 2-year lease with a tenant, so that might not be available for temporary housing of the police department. And the third choice that we looked at was the Homestead Plaza, basically the old Big Lots store. Looking at the first one, the baseball stadium. The baseball stadium is city-owned. It's 138 acres. Of course, we would only use the building, not the 138 acres. We don't need that much. But we went ahead and we hired, actually, we used the same real estate consultants to do an estimate of cost to see what it would cost to improve and modify the stadium building so that it could house the police department on a temporary basis. And the cost would be around $3 million. And again, there will be no lease cost associated with this option because we own the building. The second one that we looked at was the building on Maury Drive and West 10th Avenue. That one had an anticipated cost of $7.8 million to improve that location. And that cost includes the construction cost and also the lease cost that we would incur through a 4-year period that we would have to house the police there while we build a permanent location for them. But this one, again, is in a lease agreement now, so it looks like this is not an option. The third one that we looked at is the old Big Lots store. It's on Homestead Plaza, and that one, the anticipated cost, again, including construction and lease, will be around $7.2 million for that one. That one, in addition to the costs being high, it also had some issues regarding operations of the police, regarding the parking area, having to share the parking with the rest of the shopping center, and other safety concerns being so close to the Miami-Dade College as well. So the short-term options here, in a summary of the short-term options that we looked at, we have the baseball stadium complex at $3 million, Maury Drive and West 10th Avenue at 7.9, and Homestead Plaza at 7.2. So those are the short-term options that we looked at and analyzed to come up with a way to get them out of the building so we could look now at long-term options. Long-term options, we basically have two ways to go. We can either renovate the existing building or relocate to a new permanent site somewhere else. Looking at renovating the existing building, again, just as I mentioned before, those improvements would have to be done. Again, we're talking about a building that will require an extensive amount of repairs and improvements. It will cost around $3 million just to bring the building up to today's standards. But again, keep in mind that that building doesn't have the capacity to house the police department now, so in the future it wouldn't be able to do as well. So this $3 million would not get the building to a state where it would be able to house the police for future growth, even for the way it's operating now. Just keep in mind that it was built in 1910, and at that time the population of Homestead was 121 compared to 60,000 we have now, so that's what we're dealing with there. So the next option is to relocate somewhere else. When you look at relocation of the police department somewhere else, we had to look at, of course, land cost, structural integrity of buildings if we were going to an existing building, and to make sure, again, that it would meet the needs for the police department, not only for now, but for any future growth that they will require. So the first site that we looked at was Farm Life. It's located on the northeast corner of Farm Life and North Canal Drive. The city owns around 10 acres of land there, 5 of which is being used by the electric department right now, right adjacent to the intersection, and the police building will be housed on the north portion of those 10 acres. The construction cost for a facility there, again, there will be no land cost because we own the land. It will be around $18 million for a permanent structure to the size that the police department would need for future growth as well. Here's an aerial showing where the site is located. We have North Canal Drive going east-west at the bottom, and Farm Life going north. And you see the yellow square, that's the site where the police building will be, and right below it is the electric substation that's currently there right now. The second option that we looked at was the CRA lots in downtown. Again, city-owned. We own approximately 3.3 acres of land there. There will be some infill lots that we don't own presently that we would have to acquire, but if we do acquire those, we would have a total of approximately 6 acres of land available for the police building in that location. Again, the cost of construction will be the same as the other one. The building cost will be around $18 million. Here in yellow, that's the properties that the city currently owns. If you see, there's a couple little gaps in between that we would have to acquire, but by doing that, we would have approximately 6 acres of land available for us. And the green area enclosed at the bottom corner there, that is the current location of the police building right now. So we're basically, this site will be basically right across the street from the current location. And to get bearings, we have Chrome Avenue on the right side, that's Maury Drive, and it's basically adjacent right behind the Seminole Theater.
Julio, let me ask you a question. The acquisition part of that, you got $18 million to build the property, to build the building, but there's acquisition. Is that included in the $18 million?
No, that's not included in the $18 million in that.
Okay, so there's an unknown value.
Correct, there is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
It's a very small amount because if you look at it's only 2 little slivers that we're talking about, so.
How does it go from 3.3 to 6 acres if it's a little sliver?
Well, there is, some of them are streets that you're vacating all the streets in there, and that adds the acres.
I got it. Now, I'm sorry. I see you'd have to vacate the rights of way.
Exactly, both going east-west and north-south, and that, when you add all that up, you get the 3 acres.
Okay, good. Thanks.
The third option is, again, the Maury Drive and West 10th Avenue. That one, that's the one that's currently being leased, but it's a 2-year lease, so it could be a possibility for a long-term solution if that was the direction that we wanted to take. The construction of this site would be around $8 million to do the construction itself, but you would have to add to that the land cost, and we're estimating at a minimum of $7 million. It could be more, we don't know, but that's an estimate that we put in there. And this is the site, basically an aerial photograph of the site. So with that, I hope I didn't bore you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as staff, as we've been going through this process over the last year, chronologically, we took it at first understanding what the health and safety issues were. The conclusion, pretty clear. We have employees housed in a building that was built in 1910 that's contaminated. They're in a building that, when it was built, was 3 years before the city was incorporated, when there was 121 people in the city. And so, realistically, they need to be moved out of the building. And so, short-term solutions you've seen, long-term solutions you've seen. What we asked the staff to do then was to go through and figure out what would it take, once you make your decisions on what to do with short-term and long-term, to finance these decisions. And as you're making those decisions, what are the other projects that are currently on the board or could be on the board in the near future that you should factor into your decision-making process? Yes, ma'am.
Did council have any questions to the discussion so far? Everybody good? Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll bring up our Director of Finance, who will lead us off in that discussion.
Now, this is where the gong show does come into play. Anybody on the council that wants to gong you out, they get the gavel.
Good evening. I may be the most boring presentation, but I'm the shortest with only 14 slides. So we're going to be briefly discussing 4 projects that have a significant impact, could have a significant impact to the downtown. The first one is new City Hall. Obviously, that's been talked about numerous times in these chambers, and there are construction plans that have already gone out. There's an invitation to bid process that is underway. There's currently a site that's already set aside in the downtown area. The proposed contract is expected to be brought to the mayor and the council in spring of 2014. The project cost for this is at $25 million, and that's based on a worst-case scenario, based on the lowest bids that we received during the last bid process. Now, we currently have $16.6 million available in our new City Hall fund, and that basically presents a gap of $8.4 million. My understanding is that originally when these plans were designed, the intent was that that gap would be filled with possibly the sale of the old City Hall. That's why you see that bullet under there. But obviously, any proceeds or sale of other properties that we could generate to fill that gap would be made available, and we wouldn't have to borrow money. However, should we find ourselves in need of having to finance and borrow that 8.4, what we're proposing is obtaining a line of credit for the 8.4 million. The 16.6 would basically get us through the first 12 months of a construction period. So if during that process we find alternative means of funding that 8.4, we're fine. Otherwise, then we would start drawing down on that line of credit, and eventually, depending on how much we draw down, we would convert that into a bank loan, and the estimated cost for that would be about $713,000 over 20 years, starting in 2016. And keep in mind, though, that that 713, we would still have to find the resources to pay that debt service back. This is a sample project timeline. Obviously, the first 3 months you see it's the invitation to bid process. Then after that, staff would have it for review, contract selection, negotiations. Construction would be slated to begin in late August of 2014. Again, you have the 18-month process with the project to be completed in February of 2016. And as you can see, the first 12 months, the 16.6 would be used up, and later on we would have to do the drawdown on an 8.4. The next project is a new police building. As you just saw Julio presenting with the issues and concerns that there are at the existing police building, the council would make a determination as to whether we want to invest in the existing one or possibly find financing for a new police building. The project cost for this is estimated at 21. Now, that assumes no land acquisitions. It assumes that we would be using sites, as Julio presented to you, whether it's the CRA lots or the property north of the substation on Farm Life Road and Canal Road. The $18 million would be the cost of the facility itself. The $3 million was what we alluded to before, where we said if we had to spend $3 million at a temporary site to house the police, from an accounting and a legal standpoint, that $3 million in capital, if it's done at a city property, could be incorporated as part of a financing project so that the city could finance it over a longer period of time. And our funding proposed for this would be general obligation bond. What does that mean? That is basically voter debt. You would put it out to the voters. Basically, they would elect whether they want to pay additional property taxes to finance and fund a new police building. The annual cost of the city would be estimated at approximately $1.4 million starting in 2015, and that would be over 30 years. Now, before I move to the next slide, one other project that's been discussed here several times and would have a significant also impact to the downtown and would consider, for consideration now, is the Seminole Theater. Renovation of historical structure, arts and entertainment options for downtown. Seminole Theater, rough estimate of a cost for the renovations is $5 million. Again, the proposed funding here would be to include it in a general obligation bond. The estimated cost for this portion of it would be about $333,000 annually, starting in 2015 over 30 years. One item that the council would have to discuss if they were planning on moving forward with both of these projects to let the voters decide whether they wanted to pay for it, whether you wanted to include them in one ballot question or separate ballot questions. This is an important slide because if you're going to ask the voters to vote, they would like to know what kind of impact they would have. So the home value that we chose here is $169,600. That's considered a medium value in the city of Homestead. So for a new police building, the cost to somebody with that property value would be basically $138 annually, the additional impact in property taxes for the police building portion of it. For the Seminole Theater portion of it would be roughly $33 for a total impact of about $170. But then if you see the next two sections down at the bottom is, with $25,000 exemptions, somebody who has two $25,000 exceptions on their property, in this case, basically the police building would come under $100 impact annually, and for the police building it would be under slightly over $23 for a total impact of about $120. Key dates for a general obligation. If the consideration is to start collecting taxes in November of 2014 and trim notices go out in August of 2014, then the deadline that we have is June 1st. That means that the latest that you could have an election for the voter for the bond referendum would be May 30th of 2014, and that would mean that the latest that you could pass a bond referendum resolution would be March 27th of 2014. Basically, we need 64 days, at least 64 days from the approval of the bond resolution referendum to the date of the election. The reason for that is the county needs at least 60 days to prepare for the election, and the city clerk needs 4 days. Now, in this timeline, it's kind of the reverse. This is the earliest you could do it. If you decide that you want to move forward with a bond referendum at your next council meeting, you would do that on February 19th. You could have an election as early as April 29th. Then you would pass a preliminary millage rate in June. You would also pass the bond resolution in June. Trim notices would go out in August. In September, you would pass a final debt millage rate. In November, you would start collecting the taxes, and in January of 2015, we would basically be making our first debt payment. And before I move on, another project hasn't been discussed much, but we think is integral to downtown redevelopment is parking garage and retail space. Provide adequate safe parking in the downtown area. It could draw people into the area and bolster development and revitalization. This one, the cost for this is roughly estimated at $8 million. The funding proposed would be to obtain a bank loan. The annual cost of this would be about $547,000 annually. This one, we would be recommending paying it from PTP funds that are currently not tapped for anything, and then some CRA funds. The reason the PTP funds could be used is if we tie this as part of a transit hub, and with the CRA, because it's in the CRA area. One keynote, though, is the CRA is slated to sunset in about 8 years. So on the 8th year, if it doesn't get renewed, we'd have to look for an alternate source for repayment for that debt service. This would start in 2015, over 20 years. And this basically is a recap of the projects, the funding that we have available, the financing that would be needed, and the annual impact to the city. And as you can tell under the parking garage and retail, we have no impact because we would be using existing resources. And that does it.
Mayor, this is the portion where there's the little hazing of the new guy, and so we thought we'd want to lead everybody in the 7th inning stretch, if you'd like. Feel free to sing along with Mayor Porter. Come on, let's go. There you go. Come on, let's get enthused here. All right, come on. Come on, council. Staff, come on. Department heads, come on, please. Come on. Pedro? Very nice, very nice, very nice. There you go, Mayor. Good job, everyone. Wanted to take a little of the doom and gloom and boredom out of this whole thing by really talking about this more in terms of opportunities and where all these pieces fit, because it's very easy for us to walk out of here and say, my God, this is $60 million worth of money that we don't have, and my God, we have all these problems. We know one thing, we can't leave the employees in the building because they're breathing radioactive air and mold, and it's just not the right thing to do. So we know we're going to have to do that anyway, and as we think about whether we're going to build City Hall, whether we're going to build the police station, where do all these pieces fit within the whole puzzle of how do we fix downtown historic district? And the question is, do any of these projects fit that criteria, or any of these projects part of that puzzle? The City Hall, the police station, the Seminole Theater, the parking garage, the iconic attraction, what I call the Robert Barnes Library idea, and of course the arts, moving the library from its current location to the downtown, the arts and what we do with Art South and other arts organizations, and of course the truck bypass, which we talked about before. So some, all, or none might be part of those puzzles, but before we talk about which pieces of those puzzles are important to you all, we have to first determine whether that's an important priority for you all to begin with, and particularly at this time. And one thing I wanted to do was just kind of introduce you or reintroduce you to the debate that's been going on nationally about downtowns and why downtowns are important to communities all across the nation. This is a 2-minute clip, and I just like to play it, and I think it'll kind of explain where we're headed here.
Hello, I'm Julie Miller. Welcome to Main Street America. This program is about that part of town that most of us remember best from our childhood. That place where you may have really liked to buy candy or pick up the latest comic book. That special place to go when you went shopping with Mom. Some cities had large green areas with a gazebo or bandstand. Others were centered around retail or entertainment, such as a large theater or restaurant. But no matter how different these cities may have looked, they all shared one thing in common. Going downtown, down to Main Street, was important to everyone, both adults and children.
I think it's because we have a physiologically based desire for community, and it's founded in the real biology of human beings as a species. We're very species. We naturally seek out the company of our own kind, and there's a need to collect as a community and to share activities, experiences, ideas, learn from each other, and I think that the making of downtown as a place for the public stage of that sort of interaction between people is simply answering to the basic biological need of human beings.
During the past 40 years, however, main streets across the country became better known for decrepit buildings, homeless people, crime, and neglect than the many important commercial and social hubs they had been prior to World War II. But now, instead of walking away from these undesirable aspects of downtowns, we're starting to see collaboration with city officials, community-minded residents, public and private sectors of our societies, fighting to take back their main streets, recreating those streets as an integral part of their cities. But is this quite realistic? What does a strong Main Street area mean to a city and its residents? How does the city justify the special financing packages and tax incentives that are now being used to attract new development?
Well, that's the question. What does the latest research say about downtown revitalization? Latest study I've seen comes from Delaware Valley Planners Association, where they looked at a whole bunch of downtowns from their area and tried to discuss the question of why do downtown retail districts matter? Are they important to a community, and what are the benefits that they have on a community? Well, the report, and this is a direct quote from the report, says, downtown retail districts are an integral part of any thriving community. They serve various functions, including generating tax revenues, providing employment, providing access to a variety of goods and services, and bringing community members together. The elements that the report shows that are important pieces of the puzzle are good retail, restaurants and bars, civic buildings, cultural opportunities, tourist attractions, residential and office. Some or all combinations of those are seen in the successful downtowns all over the country. I wanted to point out a couple of pages which you won't be able to read on the screen, but are very important pages just to highlight for you, and that is some of the successful districts. There's some key elements that portions we have in place and some that we don't have in place, including management districts, whether it be CRA or Main Streets or business improvement districts, to help the area along, to make sure the constant people getting up every day thinking about how to make the place better, the right mix of retail, a pedestrian-friendly area, so when you talk about truck bypass, pedestrian-friendly elements are an important part of that, making sure that there's enough parking, because without parking, the retailers won't be successful, and it's very difficult to bring new investment in when there's no place to park. And then, of course, programming, special events, transit-oriented elements, and a unified theme. Part of what we see all over the country with downtowns are a variety of different ways to park cars, but all of them show a commitment on the part of the community to make sure that there is plenty of parking in the downtown. And of course, this particular page here will talk all about parking and why it's important and how it should be configured. But we did our own study a couple of years ago using a firm named RMA. And they literally counted every parking space in the downtown. They found 925 spaces existed. They felt that the current demand, based on a national formula, requires 1,275, which means we have a shortage of 350 spaces, and that's before you assume if the Seminole Theater is going to open and operate successfully, they're going to need about 180 spaces as well. The conclusion of the study, direct quote, older retail districts come in a variety of sizes or in different stages of life, offer different constraints and opportunities. Regardless, with proper planning and realistic goals, communities can turn their retail districts into vibrant and unique places for residents and visitors alike. Now, how do we know this? Because we have proof, and we have proof of this all over the country. Downtowns that were struggling, small towns, large cities, Florida, from Florida to California and back, Delray Beach, perfect example, beautiful downtown, lots of activity, which was struggling before and now is successful. Lake Worth, big surprise in Lake Worth, struggling, was a ghost town for a while, diverse community, lots of issues economically, but boy, their downtown is really picking up. It's starting to be a real community centerpiece. We all know the story of Lincoln Road and what that was at one point and how successful it is today. As you get to the West Coast, Pasadena, California, if you haven't been there before, beautiful, historic downtown, had lots of trouble. The city got together, made sure they did the right things, and next thing you know, it's very successful. Greenville, South Carolina, another example, Saratoga Springs, and Bethesda, Maryland, a Washington, D.C. area, very nice little area there, very successful. And of course, back to California, if you haven't been to the Santa Monica Promenade, very, very successful retail area, struggling at one time. Parking, key components of their success there, closing down the street and having a promenade. Tourists, locals, diversity, it's really a thriving area. Now, I know what some people say, well, this is Homestead, we have different challenges, we're a small little city. I can tell you what the report shows and other report shows, and if you got on a plane and flew from city to city, what you'd find the same thing is there are examples of small cities and large cities that had big trouble with their downtowns, and they were able to fix their downtowns. The worst example I lived through, I saw it myself, downtown Manhattan. I remember it when I was a teenager, and I'm going to play you a 2-minute clip from a 48 Hours piece that ran on TV. This is a place where people said, there's nothing you can do to fix it. It'll never be anything other than what it is now. And so we'll take you back to the late 1980s so that you can see what Times Square was like back then.
This man knows what's behind the bright lights in the big city. He's an undercover police officer in the public world squad. Who walked in there with a meeting proposition. Bill Daly is the director of Midtown Enforcement. So the way it works is cops come in, make the arrests, you come in on line cops, supposed to listen. Right. And that's true for the men. How many places we close? Well, actually, but the net effect has been a 2/3 reduction of the number of illegal sex businesses in Times Square. Now, this looks like a fairly sleazy block. I mean, the 144, the ecstasy, triple ecstasy, adult video center, the Onyx Theater for adults only. This is not the move we would have in mind for Times Square.
So hundreds of businesses they closed down there were illegal sex businesses, hundreds, and that only accounted for 2/3 of the businesses that were down there. Real photos, real footage of a real place that was that, plus prostitution, plus drug deals, plus high crime, the worst example of a downtown decay. And today, this is Times Square, with 39 million annual visitors from all over the world, one of the top tourist destinations in the world. People are going there, all walks of life, all ages, a place where people want to be. And that was the most extreme example of a big city with big problems, and I wanted to take you to a little place in Lee Summit, and this again is about a minute and a half, just to show you what a small little town did with their downtown. And they won the Main Street Award.
Downtown Lee Summit, you'll see the power of over 20 years of Main Street in action. The strength of this Missouri Town's Main Street program comes from its partnerships. As Lee Summit grew from a sleepy town to a booming suburban metropolis of nearly 100,000, city officials, business owners, and residents struggled to strike a balance between old and new. When downtown Lee Summit Main Street was formed in 1989, 19 buildings were vacant and many businesses were closing their shop. Main Street forged a strong partnership with the city and rallied support for downtown improvements. A citywide bond issue for streetscape improvements passed with 68% approval. The $13.5 million project replaced antiquated utilities and added wider sidewalks, trees, and pedestrian street lighting. The city reinforced this commitment by building a new $18 million city hall. Even during construction, excitement over the new public investment spurred private spending as 20 new businesses opened amidst the jackhammers and bulldozers. Lee Summit Main Street is a model of teamwork and cooperation. It worked closely with the local Historic Preservation Commission to establish a downtown National Historic District that has seen more than 50 building rehabilitations over the past 20 years. It also partners with nearby schools who offer students part-time jobs and internships. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Lee Summit Main Street consistently provides strong leadership, education, promotional opportunities, and networking to downtown businesses to help them thrive. Despite its explosive growth, Lee Summit has always looked downtown as its core, the place that links people to their past, the place that reminds them of who they are, the place they view as home, the heart and soul of their community.
The heart and soul of a community. That's pretty much the bottom line to all these studies on downtowns. And so the legislative discussion for you all is, can downtown Homestead be improved? And then, is it a priority at this time? Because like everything you do, it is about money, it is about taxes, it is about making choices. And so as you think about what to do about the front end of the issues that we had, I thought I'd just kind of remind you of the pieces of the puzzle that are in play. And just also remind you that for those who say that there's no hope for the downtown, because look, I drove down the downtown coming here, and there was nobody down there, and there wasn't a whole lot to do there. And so I think we all concede that there's room for improvement. It's certainly not Times Square of the 1980s, but there's room for improvement. And I came from a city where, when I got there, there was a 30% vacancy rate, and our first challenge was to try to bring a Starbucks to the downtown, and Starbucks told us, a city of 150,000 people, sorry, you're not ready for a Starbucks. That's how bad our downtown was. We weren't ready for a coffee shop. And by the time I left, 2 Trump Towers had gone up, a 15-screen movie theater, a performing arts center, and we started, and it is now open, a Ritz-Carlton hotel. And so that's what you can do with the downtown if the community is committed. You have some of the ingredients here, and I thought I'd show an aerial view of the downtown area and where some of these pieces could go. Certainly Washington Avenue lot, new City Hall, question mark, new police station, CRA lots, question mark, Seminole Theater, do it or don't do it, iconic attraction, can we attract an investor for that, parking, garage, and retail where the current police station is, library. and also the trolley hub, which is already in place, which already we've had a couple of hundred visitors, Vice Mayor. And so as you look at this and you think, geez, that's starting to look like critical mass, that's starting to look like a whole bunch of projects, and when cities have seen this kind of activity, the private sector typically moves in then because what they see is a community that has faith in their downtown. So lots of decisions. I don't envy your decisions because you have a lot of them to make, but I also didn't want to walk out of here with a lot of doom and gloom, because this could be a historic meeting tonight. This could be the night that the renaissance of downtown Homestead was kicked off. Certainly this is the night where our employees got to hear for the first time that their city cares about them and what kind of air they're breathing. And I know you've always supported the employees in the past. We're just going to need some direction on some of the fundamental questions. And I'm going to just go through the whole list first, and then Mayor, you can kind of kick off the discussion or kick off questions, however you want to work it. But basically, as we as a staff look for direction, we're basically looking for this. We're looking to find out from you all, can we relocate the police department, get them out of that building? If so, we'd like to move them to a temporary site. I will confess to you, because of the cost of the options and the operational concerns that we have, my preference is for the baseball stadium, but that's your choice. And that is a policy decision. From an operational perspective, I felt I had an obligation to at least let you know that for us that's easier, but we certainly can make any of those options work. If we're going to relocate them out of the building, do we fix the old building or do we build a new one? If we build a new police station, where should that new police station go? We've provided you some options, but we can always look around for others. We can always purchase other properties. Then, of course, if we're going to build a new building, how are we going to finance it? If it's going to be through a general obligation bond, when do you want to have an election? Should it be prior to June 1st so that you make the trim notice? Or should it be after the trim notice, because then you can have it anytime you want? And if you're going to have an election, should it be a walk-in election or should it be a mail-in election? And then if you're going to do the police station on the ballot, the next question is, do you have any other projects that you want to put on the ballot, Seminole Theater or anything else that you had in mind? And then if you have any projects that you want to add to the police building question, do you want to have them as separate ballot questions or do you want to have them combined? So this is really the reason why I said I don't envy your decisions. There's a lot of decisions there, but we're here to support you and to answer questions and take your direction. So with that, Mayor, we're here at your disposal.
A lot of things to talk about. I guess from my perspective, I think we should first decide with regards to the police department itself. Does the council feel like it's worthwhile to put any money into the existing building? Because we talked about this years ago, and I wasn't at the time interested in putting any money into that old building. So that tees up the next part of the conversation. So, I mean, if we could get some feedback on council's wishes as to that question, then we can go to the next question. Anybody got any comments? Vice Mayor?
Sure, I'll go ahead and weigh in on that one. I mean, yeah, I think we need to get our police department out of the current building. And then as far as rebuilding that one, I just don't think it makes sense to put that type of money into an old building that won't accommodate the force that we currently have. And there's been a lot of discussion over the last year or so about increasing the number of police officers that we have on the street. And that will definitely not be able to happen very efficiently if we just rebuild that old building. So I think that's my decision on that one question.
Anybody opposed to that thought process as far as leaving, I mean, not investing any in the old facility? Okay, pretty much that's off the table then.
Thank you.
Relocation. I mean, that's the priority now. Temporary site. I mean, there's no other alternative. We have to put them in a temporary site.
In my opinion.
So the estimated cost, I mean, the K&A lot may not even be available. Big lots, I could see where that would be a lot of logistics, a lot of open to the public, where that may not be a good opportunity. And obviously, if we do invest in our own infrastructure, our own facility, you know, realizing at the end of the time that the police department is there, now you have a renovated building that you could use as a, somewhat of a community center like we have here. And you have access to something on the east side of town to kind of mirror what we have on the west side of town, is possibly having something available for the community to use. I mean, any discussion from council? I'm doing all the talking, but I just, you know, I'm just trying to say my thoughts. Mr. Burgess?
Just one thought that just popped in my head, and I know when we had a discussion about putting the charter school over there, we had some concerns in regards to the flight zone, and so I know that the building's in a safe area, but has any, you know, as we make this decision, have you or has the thought of having discussion with the base in regards to what we're doing?
We have discussed that internally. What we wanted to do is have the conversation with you first, but staff, Julio, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Councilman Maldonado, you're correct. The building, the baseball stadium building itself, it's outside the restricted zone, so it is outside, so that shouldn't be a concern. It was actually already being used as office building space by the previous tenant, and even before that when it was a baseball stadium, so there shouldn't be a concern regarding the stadium building itself when it comes to the baseball, to the air base.
Of course, if you make a decision to go there, we're certainly going to go and talk to everybody, make sure everybody understands what's going to be happening out there, not only the base, but the neighboring communities and the school, and just make sure everybody understands what's happening over there.
Ms. Waldman?
Thank you. If that site were to be the one chosen, how long would it take to get them in there?
We're thinking somewhere between 6 to 8 months. Initially, the estimate was a year. We've really shaved it down, so obviously the sooner we can get a decision out of you all. The problem was we couldn't find any other solution that was quicker than 6 to 8 months, unfortunately. And as Julio mentioned about radon, which we faced at the City Hall, it's the same question about smoking, right? Is how many cigarettes do you have to smoke in order to get lung cancer, right? Well, some people don't get lung cancer when they smoke. Some people can smoke all their lives and they'll get it in their 80s, or they may get it in their 50s. And so you don't know how many cigarettes you have to smoke and how long you have to smoke before you get sick. Same thing with radon. We're going to try to get everybody out as quick as possible, but anything shorter than 6 to 8 months does not look good at this point.
Yeah. So, you know, without having heard from any of the residents, I mean, it's all about money. That's really what it's all about. And let me just see if I can break it down. So we're estimating $3 million to get the site ready. Could there be a phase in where you're getting so much, like when a portion of it is complete, you could move a section over, clerical or whatever, just to try to get these people out of the building?
Julio?
Well, we're going to look at the best possible way to face the moving into the building. And you're absolutely right. We need to look at all options here. What we did when we shrunk down the schedule of construction, you have to keep in mind that there's design aspects that are part of that whole period of time. There's construction, there's demolition. So whether or not there's going to be opportunities to move people in faster than others, yeah, there probably will be, because as we concentrate on certain areas, the idea is to do this as a design build type of operation where parts of the building or the improvements are being designed while others are being constructed. So there will be a flow. It won't be like all or nothing, basically. We won't have to wait to the very end to move people in. So that is definitely on the table.
So, if I may, so with that being said, I know the K&A building very well. I mean, I think that's almost impossible, to be honest with you. And I know the Big Lots building very well. So basically what we have in front of us is the baseball stadium. And I think one very important aspect of that is that there wouldn't be any rent to pay. So I don't know if you've calculated that savings as far as dollar amount.
Yes, that's one of the major differences between the first one and the next two, is the other two factor in rent.
But I'm sorry, I haven't had a voice in 3 days, so I'm struggling here. But with that being said, you know, I know we have to make it. We have to get them out of there. To me, it's not even a decision. They have to get out of there. As far as the financing for a new police station, I would like to see it go before the voters, and I'd like to see it go before the voters as soon as possible, because the longer we wait, the longer it's going to take to start making moves to do something permanent. I'll just go ahead and say what I want to say, so I have a voice right now. So, and that is that it's my opinion that I would like to see a walk-in vote, because a mail-in vote, people who maybe have never voted before see something in front of them and says, I don't want any more taxes, I'm just voting no on everything. Whereas the people who actually come to the polls care. They really care. And I think that they understand if we advertise this in a way, which that's another question that I have, and I'll digress for a second, and that is, if we do go for an election, we have to have some advertisement. We have to let people know why they need a police station. It's not because we're trying to be frivolous, or, you know, they have to know why. So there has to be some factoring in on cost as far as putting the word out there. So that's my opinion as far as, I'm going by the list, that's why I keep looking at this, a walk-in or a mail-in. I think a walk-in vote is very important. I personally would like to see separate ballots on whatever we decide, because there may be some people who just would vote yes on everything, some people who would vote no on everything, and some people who would vote for one or the other, but they'd like to have the option to have it broken down and vote. Let me see what else is on your list here.
Location of the new building.
The location, I don't know how long y'all have been looking. You know, I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, I wish that we had thought about the new city hall itself before it's gotten so far. I mean, I'd like to just start over and build a city hall and a police station together, and that's what my wish is. Yeah, it would take a little longer, it would cost a little money, but I think that's where I'm looking at Chief right now, because I mean, to me, that's what it's all about, is having that marriage between the two, the city hall site and the police station. That's what I'd like to, I mean, I know, of course, if I have a voice, I'd love to chime in maybe later, but thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Faircloth, then Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to address the immediate question as far as the relocation of our police officers, I think we're on one accord as far as not willing to invest any more money into the current facility, because those dollars just really wouldn't make sense. And I understand that if we move forward with the general obligation bond for the new police building, we'll put that on the ballot. But as far as the temporary quarters, where will that money come from?
Well, if the bond is successful, because it's a city building, we're able to reimburse ourselves with the bond money. So, and that's a big difference too between going to the baseball stadium versus the private locations, because you wouldn't be able to do that likely with the private locations. So the other question would be, if by some chance the bond doesn't pass, then we'd have to pull from fund balance or take out a loan, and then we'd also have to figure out what to do about, because I'm assuming that if the bond failed, then we would have to retrofit the old building and put them back. So, which would be a fairly ugly scenario, but, you know, that's what elections are all about, so.
Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. I too am in agreement that we definitely need to get our employees out to a safe place. I have, in fact, never been in favor of the police station, but since, you know, as we sit here and talk tonight and talk dollars and cents, you know, we're kind of backed into a corner. for whatever reason, and you know, the reimbursement plays a big part into the, as we look down the road. One of the questions was answered, you know, if the bond doesn't pass, then what is the city's plan of, you know, from there? And you answered, you know, we would have to retrofit. The $3 million, I've been out to the building and walked around for an hour or so. What kind of guarantees do we have on that figure? How do we know it's not gonna, we're not gonna get into it and we're at $5 or $6 million and we can't make it in 6 to 8 months? It's 12 to 14, 15, 18 months, just because when they get in there, the disrepair of that building is so bad. So I guess my question is, how thorough has this inspection been out there? How thorough,
Doctors and lawyers and city managers never love to talk about guarantees.
how thorough is the $3 million figure that's been proposed tonight?
Julio?
And what kind of overrun would you expect?
We don't like talking about overruns. But basically...
Neither do I, but you always bring them to me.
Well, the estimates are, of course, they're estimates. That's the term says it all. We've had numerous experts go out there and take a look at the building and see what needs to be done. When you're renovating an existing building, you have a little more play in what you need to do in terms of, or if you have a budget, you can match your improvements to the budget that you want to keep. So if we're going with a goal of $3 million to be the improvements that we need to do to that building, we have leeway throughout this whole process, especially if we do a design-build process where we can design things as we're constructing. We can see exactly where we might need to cut back a little bit and do certain modifications to the renovations that would, at the end of the day, still give you the operational efficiency and the needs that the police department needs for a temporary location. So I've looked at the numbers. What we did is we got the numbers from the experts, and I did them myself without even looking at their numbers, and we came up basically with the same figure. I came up with 2.7 million. That was my number.
So we can hold you to that?
No.
And by the way, I'm not an engineer, but what that sounded like was definitely not a guarantee. Not a guarantee. He's going to do the best he can, but, you know, it's like everything else.
It is not.
I don't know who else has walked around out there and taken a tour with the chief and his command staff, but that building is frightening. And the majority of it is you can't operate anything out there. The light switches are scary, the wiring in the whole building, the fire system, they've spent money getting it back just so that it would work if we had an emergency out there right now, not to the standards of protecting the police force. And that's one of my fears, is that we're going to go out there and find that we really need $5 million to make that a viable building for our police department as we dig into it. And that's a big unknown.
And you know, Councilman, we thought of that as well. The problem became, as we looked at the other options were so expensive that even if we had overruns, for us it still seemed like the better of the three options. But you're absolutely right, with construction, you can never be sure.
Right. No, and I understand that. But I'm just that building is seen better days, let's put it that way. And the last tenant we had there didn't help the city any in its repair, really. So I guess I'll go down the list with you too. You know, if it has to go out there, I think we need to do a great job of educating the public, because it's not an easy place for the people from the Northwest to find, the Southwest, or Oasis or whatever. They're not used to it being there. The citizens of Keysgate are going to need to have a lot of reassurances put to them. Absolutely. And it's going to be a lot of PR work on our half.
Absolutely.
That's going to need to be done as we hold meetings out there to assure them that, you know, of what we're doing and what our plan is. And I represent them, and I've heard from many of them with concerns not only about that not, you know, being an ideal place, but, you know, with the school zone there, no public transportation for people to get in and out of there. And of course, you know, they don't want to start seeing a lot of city buses coming up and down the road, because it's a quiet neighborhood out there where that's not really a necessity. So there's a lot of things that we need to educate and get worked out with our citizens over there on that side of town as we move forward, if that's the...
And starting tomorrow morning, assuming the majority agreed at that site, we are going to start scheduling meetings with interested parties and educate and address concerns too, because we haven't thought of everything, and somebody may come up with something that we need to think about in terms of operations, so we'll start doing that. We also welcome your feedback in terms of who else we should be meeting with.
Right. And as far as the location of a new one, I believe we need to look at the CRA lots. Once again, the farm life area backing up to a quiet neighborhood to the back, and neighborhoods across the street, and residential has been approved across the street. I don't think that that's a viable option for the city, even though we do own the land. I think we should look at the CRA lots downtown, keep it centrally located. And then one of the other things, before I can really go on to the Seminole Theater or to the parking garage, I think one of the biggest pieces we're missing here tonight is what are we going to do with this iconic attraction? Is it a reality? Is it a pipe dream? When is it going to happen? Because I think that plays into what we're going to do with the Seminole Theater and with the parking garage downtown. So on those two things, until we get some sort of questions answered on the iconic attraction in the direction we're going to take on that, to me, they're a non-discussion item at this point. And I did a little bit of research. The county right now is dropping over $4 million a year into their cultural center in South Dade, and that's their subsidy of that. So I think there's a lot of questions that we need from the study on the Seminole Theater study too, before we can go out there and tell somebody it's going to be $40 a year or what it's going to be, whatever the figure Carlos and them had done. I'm just using a number. I think there's still a lot of questions that we need answered before we can go putting those type of things out for a bond referendum, and not knowing exactly what it might cost the residents per year in addition to what the bond is going to cost us. So I think we should look at downtown with the CRA lots. I think there's some questions there. We always say that, I heard Julio say the land is minimal. The land isn't minimal when the city shows up. Everybody doubles and triples their prices, Julio, so I hope you didn't jinx us.
We're likely to be talking takings, similar to the right-of-ways, and the lawyers will then fight with other lawyers on valuation.
And then, one other point is, a year and a half ago, I suggested the bowling alley, and here we sit today, looking at millions of dollars needed for the city, yet we're looking at, and ready to give away a piece of property that could bring the city some money to help us for $500,000, or even another idea is to put the police station over there. So I just think that there's a lot of things that people are missing that as we move forward, and that's my opinion, sir, and I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir. Mr. Maldonado?
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, just before, did you have any ideas or input on the question of walk-in versus mail-in and the dates?
Well, I think it's a walk-in. If you can guarantee me that the citizens can be educated, or we have workshops so that they know exactly what the bonds are going to do, and you can tell me that in good faith that your office is giving it 100% to educate all 60,000 people or whatever it is here in the city of Homestead as to what we're asking them to do, then I will move forward in June. If we can't do a good job of getting the word out and educating everybody, then we need to do it when it's feasible, when it becomes a reality of us being able to get the job done, of letting the people know and educating them.
My goal would be to try to get you a timeline by the next council meeting, which would be next week, in terms of the educational campaign, and timeline this thing out so that you can look at it one more time to decide whether you feel there's enough time or not.
Great. Well, if you bring me a program that I think is sufficient in educating the public, then I'm willing to move forward in June. If the timeline looks too rushed or whatever to me, then I will have to make that decision then. And as far as things, I think they need to stand separate, and everything needs to win or fail on its own merits.
And Councilwoman Moore, I forgot that, did you mention timing as well, or is that one that I missed?
I think timing is very important. I thought I might have indicated that in the beginning, but I can't remember.
I couldn't. Sorry about that.
But I think timing is very important because it's like anything. The longer you delay, the longer it's going to take.
Okay, so prior to June 1st would be your preference?
And I did mention about marketing and making sure that people know what they're voting for and what.
Sure.
What,
Absolutely.
Looking at this, I'm wondering if maybe we could have just filled in, asked all the questions and put yes, no. I think it would have made it a lot easier if we could just turn it in. And obviously there's, like the rest of the council is kind of mentioning, and there's some of these ideas that we like to do, but we need a little bit more information. And I think it's in regards to the Seminole Theater, whether that report that we read or that we're going through, was it a good report? Was it biased? Is it still hold true to today, from the original study? So I think that's some of the information. Now, if I just go down quickly to the list, of course, relocating the police department, right away. We know the effects of our health is everything. And we want to let our police know that. And I think the community will get behind them 100% on that. The temporary site, I'm okay with the stadium, of course. The only question we have is the traffic pattern. How's it going to work? When do we get that information? Is the traffic steady going out? Is there a preferred route? What are your procedures when you're going to take off? We're going to residential communities. Is it, do we, normally we think of the police station as a base. They leave there, they jump in their cars and turn on the sirens and get out of there, and that's normally not the case. But I think, we need to definitely have that detail clear so that, again, we could better educate the residents within that area. So do we need a new police building? I would say yes. We are a growing city. We're going to continue to grow. One of the key factors that make this, a great city, and we discussed the quality of life, and it's our police force that provides us that sense of security that we live in a great community. And so we know and we believe that the community, they say they're going to get behind us on this, and I think that they're going to need the tools and the facility to operate accordingly. And again, we are going to grow. So, the new police building, yes. Of course, the bond is going to be the answer on that one. The general GOB, I'm just kind of going down and saying the answer is the GOB bond. I think, the walk-in is like Councilman Waldman mentioned. It's, the people who care are on top of it, and as long as we do our job and educate the community what's happening, I wouldn't see why they won't come out. Now, special election or general election, is there any difference in that? Is there?
General is cheaper. The special election costs us $80,000, Carlos?
Well, it wouldn't be a general because there is no general election, so it would be a special election. It's just a difference between a walk-in and a mail-in. The walk-in is approximately $90,000, and a mail-in is about $65,000.
Okay, so yeah, because it has here a special general, so okay. So
yeah,
it'll be a special election.
And the distinction in the dates is June 1st, prior to June 1st means you make it on this year's trim notice. If you do the election after June 1st, then it won't go on the trim notice till the following year.
Okay. Separate the ballot questions, I think, once we get to it.
Did you have a preference on the timing, pre-June 1st or post?
I would say pre. I think I think we all recognize that we're at a great time in the city. We're seeing construction happen again, we're seeing growth happen again, and I think we need to, take this time and make the best of it. You mentioned that, and I know you said it jokingly, well, I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, but I'm actually glad that those that are up here, and you guys as a staff, I think we're at the right place at the right time for the city to move forward. This is a strong council with a strong staff, and I think the people, they just want to make sure that where they're putting their dollars, if they're going to say yes to this, it's going to work accordingly. I think that's the assurance that we want. But I'm confident in what this team that you have put together, as well as us, we'll be able to get through this, and it's going to be great for the city. We are at that turn. Sometimes I jokingly tell folks, I says, we're only 100 years old, and I believe, I'm not going to go to the back and how we got here, but we definitely need to move forward with the city. We are growing. There's some studies that I've attended to recently that has to do with the Metro Forum and economic studies, and Miami is going to continue to grow. We're a tourist destination, and there was a study recently, and I hope to bring this forward to you soon, where there's 3 cities that surround Miami-Dade County, or the city of Miami, that are going to be greatly impacted and changing within the coming years, and Homestead was one of them. And it's because, there could only happen so much within the city. Eventually, the people are going to have to, spread out and find houses that are affordable or more bang for the buck, is what I like to say when you're down here in Homestead. I mean, you have a great, and constantly we're seeing folks move in here in our neighborhood. I'm getting neighbors from West Miami, from from everywhere throughout Miami-Dade County, and it's because when they come down here, there's space, and so I think it's a great time. So Seminole Theater, I think it's just a little bit more information on regards of that study. Does it hold its weight today? I think we've always supported it. If these numbers that we have here, are they exact or?
They're estimates.
Estimates.
They're estimates. So whatever would go on the ballot would be the maximum number. So like Julio mentioned about any of the projects, we have experts that give us estimates, but in terms of anything that's approved by a general obligation bond, that's the number, that's the maximum number. The hope would be to get it down lower. And I think the Seminole Theater Group, having met with the board, they understand that we're going to have to take the list of the wish list items and start paring some of those back so that we can create a little bit of flexibility there. And also yesterday we had a discussion, because the consultant has been in talking to the various potential renters of the theater and users of the theater, and the question was, can we use some of the bond money to fix the park as well, with speakers and sound systems that will kind of complement what they're doing inside the building. And so as we think through what's important on that light list of construction items, we're really going to have to start making some tough decisions about what stays in and what goes out.
Now, I don't see on here, and I know that we're talking as well for the garage. Is that going to be included within a bond, or is that a separate item?
The garage would be a separate item, but we thought of all the issues that you had to consider today, until we hear back from the iconic study, the iconic attraction study. That one there, the big question for us is, do they find a private investor? And then also, will that private investor be providing parking? Will it be sufficient to park whatever the attraction is doing, or will they need additional? Or will they be willing to do their own larger parking garage? So we wouldn't want to come to you with a very specific garage project until we fully understand the overall parking needs beyond what we know right now. Right now we know we're under by 350, and we know that the Seminole Theater is going to need 180. Beyond that, until the iconic attraction comes back to us, and we're hoping to have that in a couple of months. By that point, we'll be well underway towards moving to the bond, and assuming you're okay with the garage project, that would be paid for through a loan, the debt service which would be paid for by PTP funds and by CRA monies.
Now, just another question on the garage. What's your thought process on, is it going to be something, and I know someone mentioned it, where it's something we're going to build, manage as a whole, as a city, or are we going to go into some type of private-public partnership?
Well, it's a very good question. What we did initially to stimulate this discussion is...
And one more question, because you also had a study, the group that, did we have this? Okay.
The RMA studies in your binder.
In the study, one of the many books we got to finish going through, maybe shed some light, maybe a little note of how they see it being built,
Sure. What we did to put that slide together and to put our estimates together is we literally went to the newest garage we could find with a similar concept, which was Delray. And what they did is they built street-level retail with parking above, and so that's how we came up with our estimates. So the picture that you see is literally their garage. We recognize that if we go in the direction of a garage, architecture is going to be much different in that it'll need to meld with the historic character of the district. And also, we do want to look at some options in terms of whether it's a partnership of some sort or whether we do it ourselves, and that's revenue. And again, part of that would also be dependent on the iconic attraction, because if they say they're going to need a bunch more parking spaces, we could charge for parking, and you could end up having this garage pay for itself over time and bringing in revenue. So you might not necessarily want to turn that over to the private sector if, in fact, there's another model that works better for us. Some cities have plenty of parking garages that generate a lot of revenue for them, and some of them have the private sector do it. I can tell you this, the thought process is, in addition to the parking spaces, if we can create enough retail on the ground level, because of the parking spaces above, our intent would be to try to get to the shopping centers convention and start marketing that site so that we can attract maybe a larger retailer. Because if a retailer knows that they've got a downtown location where there's parking spaces that are their own and they don't have to spend money on parking, that could be a very important incentive in attracting somebody to the downtown. So the whole theory of all these pieces is start investing from the city side, but then start marketing on the private sector side too, to really attract people and say, this is going to be a really important place one day, and now's the time to get in while the infrastructure is going in.
Okay, I think last year it says, the last item is where should we put the new facility? Is back, like with how Councilwoman Waldman mentioned, when we were discussing the building of the City Hall, you know, I think I would have wished I said it back then, but I would have wished that we could have planned to build it there. Is there still any space available within the area? Can we kind of retro build behind it, retrofit it, the current design to meet that, blend it together, and then, you know, do some with the parking lot as well?
I don't want to sound like I'm dodging the question, but it's very important for us to stay as neutral and detached as possible. We take the direction that we got from the majority of the council. So the last direction that we got from the council regarding the City Hall was go with the existing construction drawings, go out to the street for bids, and so that's pretty much where we've headed. Those plans cost about $1 million, so if you're going to start from scratch, it really is just a function of time and money. Anything is possible. The architects have informed us that if you take the existing building that's constructed, there really is no way to configure a police station as well. The building was just not designed that way. I'm not an architect. I can just tell you what they told us, but really that's just a judgment call on whether you want to start from scratch on that project or not.
Okay. I'm good for now.
Good. Anything in terms of location?
I would say more in the, that's a tough one. I mean, because if we look at the history of how the CRA acquired the lots and the intent of it, I think it was to complement the downtown area. And so, you know, we have an opportunity where, you know, we're going to, if this downtown area grows, you know, that's possible location where we can have something that's going to complement what we do, be it retail, you know, something else. And so we have to keep that in mind. Or do we put the police station there, which would be just right around the corner from where we're at now. So it's a tough decision right now. The space, now let me ask a question, the space over on Farm Life Road, correct?
Farm Life, yeah.
Is it sufficient? Is it ideal? What are your thoughts on that right now?
Well, we've been told that the architects that did the initial schematic for the current plan for a police station designed it based on that location. That being said, it really comes down to the policy question of, first of all, planning principles. Where do you put a government building, and does it belong in a residential neighborhood versus a downtown area? And the other question for us, which was we debated this and we agonized over it, even just doing the temporary space, the police station at the stadium, it is a residential area and it's not typically where police stations go. Now, if it was our only piece of property, then certainly you have to do what you have to do. If people don't like that site and they don't like the CRA site, then we could start looking to purchase property. It just makes the cost larger. And then the other question becomes, does the police station, building it down in the downtown, you know, the theory is that if you're going to do $60 million worth of development, might as well put it in the downtown to stimulate more. But that's a policy question, and there's pros and cons to both, because clearly The police station there is there right now. So the concept that by putting a police station there, all these bodies are going to come out of the building and there's going to be all kinds of stores as a consequence, that's not really the concept, because it's already there and it's going to be a wash in terms of people on the street. On the other hand, it'd be a newer building. It'll be behind Losner Park, so you could see it on Chrome, and it'll be one of several new construction projects that hopefully will get attention from the private sector. But does it have to go there? No, it can go just about anywhere you want.
Now, when you guys, there was a study that we paid for, but with Katie Sorensen gave us some money, and I know we talked about the downtown area. Was that area, was there any concepts that they came up with, anything that would give us a little bit more information about that piece of property before we weigh in on it, as what it could become? How does it come into, the downtown area and the master plan? Is there any, does the CRA have anything in regards to that, or it's just?
I'm not really familiar with the Katie Sorensen study, but we can look tomorrow and try to get you something.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess go down the list. I'll follow everyone else's lead. I think the toughest answer for me to give was this temporary site. The rest, I think my mind was made up. My decision is easy, but I fought really hard with staff at our meeting. I continued to fight with them for the week thereafter our meeting. I wasn't really happy with my options that were placed before me. I think they were all bad options, but at the end of the day, I had to pick one of them. And so I support moving to the baseball stadium. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't see any other financially feasible option. I would have liked to have information on the bowling alley site. I think that it would have been nice to have had that information, maybe made this decision before we decided to go out there and put it out to RFP or make the bowling alley decision. I would have liked to have that conversation first. I would have liked to have had those numbers. But at the end of the day, we don't have them. The decision was made by the majority of council, and so it's off the table. And so my decision is still between the three items that are placed before me, which have now been narrowed down to two. So as a result, I will support moving them to the baseball stadium as a temporary site, but I don't necessarily like it, so I'll put that on the record. But I do support it, and I think that's really the only option we have going forward. As far as the building a new site or building, where to build a police station thereafter, I support the CRA lots. I think that if we're going to invest in the downtown, and I'm a big believer in investing in our downtown and really making that the heart of our city and giving us an identity, then I think we go all in. And so I think you add the police station to all the other projects that we have potentially on the list, and at the end of the day, I'm hoping that it's a success. And so I support moving the police station down there with all the other investments that this city is possibly going to make in the downtown area. I support a walk-in vote. I think that it's important that, because again, you have people who may vote that otherwise would never vote if it's a mail-in, and this way at least you have people who are informed, who want to vote, and who are interested and involved in the community, showing up to make these major decisions for our community. I support the general obligation bond. I think that that's the route to go. If we're going to do this, that's another reason why I support the temporary site of the baseball stadium versus trying to fight for some other option to be looked at, is I think it's important that we do keep this quick time frame. If we're going to make this work, we need to work in this year, because there's political questions, there's all sorts of other things that start to come into play that start to muddy the waters if we don't move at a quicker pace. So I do support the prior to June 1st decision-making timeline. The only question I would ask on that is, are there steps along the way? Are there places along the way where we can change our mind? Because one of my answers is the Seminole Theater. I support putting the Seminole Theater out there for a ballot question. I think they should be two separate questions, not combined. But I have some of the similar concerns. I'm a big supporter of the Seminole Theater. I think that we need to make a decision on this piece of property. It's been sitting there for quite some period of time and waffling around, what do we do with it? And I think this is a way to make a final decision. Let's put it out there, let's get it voted on. And if it comes back yes, then we build it. If it comes back no, then maybe we all have to sit down and figure out what do we do with this building. But at least we will try to make a decision, we will try to make an effort. But I do believe that there is a little bit of lack of information at this point about all the issues surrounding the Seminole Theater. So I support putting it out there on the ballot. Along the way, though, if we get negative information, if we get information that maybe the study that's being done comes back and shows that it's not even remotely feasible to operate, is there places along the way that we can then stop and say, you know what, we don't want to actually put this on the ballot? Or if it's already been voted on by the public and we get the information after the fact, is there some point where we can say, you know what, we're not actually going to accept the bond?
Once we put the timeline together, the answer is the trigger date, assuming you'd go with a special election prior to June 1st, the trigger date is going to be sometime in March for a bond referendum resolution that would be approved by this body. So you would have up until that time to change your minds if you want to do the resolution earlier and then change it afterwards. The one thing we would encourage you, if we're going with an election prior to June 1st, as you mentioned, the education campaign has to start pretty quickly, so the voters are really going to need to know, what are we building, where are we building it, how much is it going to cost, is it going to be separate items? So the sooner you make that the decision, the more time there'll be to educate the voters on this. So you could go ahead and assume Seminole Theater or not assume it, but then what do you do with the voters in terms of educating them? Are we doing it? Are we not doing it? And that clarity is going to be important, because if they don't think you're sure about what you're doing, they're not going to have as much confidence in the item as well. So it's probably better at some point, sooner than later, that you all make a decision. We did push the consultant to try to get us some preliminary data by the end of this month on the Seminole Theater. The good news is he came and saw the theater for the first time, and he was very positive about its prospects. And I wasn't sure either way, because I've done 2 projects with him before, and he is, he's very conservative, and I wasn't sure, but he was fairly optimistic that this thing has potential, but it's not going to be free. Okay, so, and if we can get you that information towards the back end of the month, and then we can bring the bond referendum resolution shortly thereafter, maybe we can fly him in, you can have the discussion, and then make that decision. In the meantime, we'll get the timelines together, we'll start gearing up, and then as soon as you pass that bond referendum resolution, then we'll hit the streets with the information.
Okay, because I think that's important. I think if we're going to do the Seminole Theater at any time, this is the time to do it, because we already put in a bond, it seems like, bond referendum out there for the police station. And so now would be also the time to go ahead and put this bond referendum out there. Let's make some decisions on this property so that we can move forward with that particular building. It's either going to be a theater or it's going to be something different, but let's not just have this thing hanging over our head for the next 15 or 20 years. And the other thing, too, is I know I've met with the board a couple times, and one of the things that they've represented to myself and to staff was that they were willing to step away from the project. So that was something else that we need to discuss going forward, maybe in the next month, to say, can we get something in writing that shows that, conditioned upon us putting a bond out there and the bond being approved by the voters, that they will essentially turn control of that facility and that contract over to us, so that we can then go out there and bring that private entity in, or that public-private partnership, or whatever we're going to put together to make sure that this theater is successful going forward. And so I think that's some more information that my colleagues need to be aware of, and also that we actually come to fruition, so that there's some protection for us putting this thing out there for the bond.
Right, we're also talking with the board about some hybrid where they feel that they have some inclusion in the project, and so whether it be an advisory board or, again, part of the discussion we had with the consultant yesterday was, what kind of management model will he recommend anyway? So there's a whole slew of management models, one being city control, one being nonprofit control, one being for-profit control. So he's going to look at that as well and give you some recommendations. But what they said as a board was, or as individual board members, that they are definitely flexible on the idea of whatever it's going to take to make this thing work, right, they will work with the city.
But I just think it's key, because making sure that, again, if we don't address that contract, that essentially we the city put out the bond, we make the commitment, but ultimately we have no final control or say over how the process goes forward. So I think that's something that needs to be kind of walked through, and I think it's important for my colleagues to understand as well that the way we're trying to set this system up, this partnership, working together, is to allow us to do what's best to make the theater succeed if we go that route. And I think that answers all the questions that I had. Do I have anything else I need to answer a question for you?
Nope, I think that does it.
Okay, then that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Ms. Fairclough.
Thank you. Tough topics tonight, but I'm glad we're having these conversations so that we stop dancing around these hot topics and really delving into making decisions about them. I reluctantly support moving to the baseball stadium for the temporary quarters. Just looking at the numbers, it just makes financial sense to move in that direction, although I'm really a little uncomfortable about it, but it's a tough decision that we have to make, and I reluctantly make that decision. As far as moving the community forward, for me, I have been a consistent proponent of moving to revitalize downtown, and I think it's very important for us to create a hub in the heart of Homestead. I had the opportunity to walk Delray Beach. I was briefed on the history and the intellect behind their renaissance. I had the opportunity to walk a downtown in California. I had an opportunity to walk a downtown in Greenville, South Carolina. So those authentic learning experiences have positioned me to see the potential in our downtown, and I'm really excited about that. And you mentioned tonight that we can start that renaissance tonight, and I'm willing to move forward with that renaissance. And I just like to highlight what I'm committed to when it comes to downtown. I'm committed to City Hall in downtown. I have not wavered from that, nor will I waver from that. I'm committed to a police station downtown so that we can create a whole hub and environment in that community. As far as the ballot, the general obligation bond, I support that, and I am amenable to separate ballot questions. I am excited about Seminole Theater. I've always been a fan of the Seminole Theater, but I also am a fan of what the people want. It's the people's decision. So we can put it out in the general obligation bond separately, and if that is what the people want and the community decide, I am willing to back you wholeheartedly. As we're commissioning this study with the Seminole Theater, can we include some background information on Overtown's historic lyric theater and what the city of Miami just did with revitalizing the lyric theater? So I think when we have this information, it's best to have some information as far as what other municipalities have done. And as we move forward with the general obligation bond and the marketing, I think it's very important for us to put together a very aggressive marketing piece. But I think if we're committed to this general obligation bond, we should champion it also and not just leave it to the city manager. And what I would recommend is town hall meetings in each of our respective districts so that we can go out to our community, have that conversation with them, present it to them so that they can make informed and educated decisions. If we're asking them to invest this amount of money, I think we should go out to them personally and have those conversations with them and to sell it if we're that committed for it. I am in favor of a walk-in ballot because if this is something you would want, you'll take the initiative to go in and vote for it. And we know those people that go in to vote for it, they're committed to it. I'm for pre-June 1st. After that, it's the summer. Families are gone on vacation. You'll have a lower turnout. So I'm committed to prior to June 1st. I believe I have answered all of the questions.
That does it. Thank you.
But Mr. Burgess, then Ms. Wallman.
Thank you. I think we all, as we look at a date, we need to make sure it's prior to Memorial Day weekend, wherever that falls at that month.
Sure.
Because I do think people travel, and that's when they start their travel season and long weekends and stuff. We may miss out on a number of voters. The $8.4 million for the new city hall, that's all included in this, or is that going to be a separate ballot question?
That wouldn't require a referendum at all. Basically, the proposal is we're taking what we hope is the worst-case scenario of the bids from the last one that we rejected when the 5 bids came in from City Hall. So we've kind of taken that as our high line. And so we know how much we already have in cash in the bank. And what the staff is recommending is that we take out a letter, we get a line of credit, and we have whatever the balance is once you let a contract. So let's assume it's 25 million. That balance from what we have is what we'd have the line of credit for, and we'd start drawing on it as needed. Worst case scenario, we pay the debt service starting in 16, and that would come from the general fund. However, if there are other projects that we can either start a leasing program or a sale of property, we can start paying that back somehow. So that would not need a referendum to do that.
Parking garage and retail. What other sites have we determined on something like that? Worst case scenario that the bond doesn't pass and the police have to go back to their old building and we have to renovate that. Because I believe that the drawings I looked at and the scenario that was drawn up goes to that location. So we looked at other spots.
We really haven't looked at other spots until we understand more about the iconic attraction. And once we have a sense of whether that's go or no-go, then if it's no-go, then this whole idea could take on a different form. If the police station is not approved, then we could start looking for other locations, assuming, of course, that the if the iconic attraction doesn't go, then you could always put parking over there if the bond doesn't go. So there's some permutations and combinations here, but I think we need a little more information before we can get a decision on the parking garage.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Waldman.
There's pitfalls by going first, because you make me think. You make me think more. I don't think I really ever answered the question as to where I would like the police station to go, because I said, and I still stand by it, that I really wish that it would go with the city hall and that it could be one unit. Then you just said something that made me think that if the iconic attraction doesn't go, then the police station could go there in that spot. We talked about that a long time ago. And but bottom line is, I just want to put on the record that I want the city hall to go downtown. So if it doesn't work with the city hall, which it doesn't seem like I have any support here on that, but still I'm going to put it out there that I do wish we could rethink that. And if the iconic attraction, which I hope does go, if it doesn't go, then I'd like to look at that, and then of course the CRA lots. But as long as we can keep it downtown, I think that's extremely important.
That's very helpful, because that was the fourth person to say that, so now it looks like we have majority consensus on all the questions.
Well,
and Mayor, you're not even weighed in yet, so.
I have one more thing, Mayor, if you don't mind. As far as the Seminole Theater goes, I've supported the Seminole Theater since I've been on council, and continue to do so, but I think it's very important we get that study back. So, do you put it on the ballot before you get the study back? You know, that's the question, because I reread, had a lot of time on my hands this weekend, not being able to talk. And that report was from 2008, and I think the board would agree that there's a lot of information in there where, I mean, you know, it's non-existent. I mean, you can't even compare it. So, do you know when? I mean, I know you say you've been pushing on them.
Preliminary operational costs come at this end of the month. The final report will come the following month. That'll be the more detailed about what the model is, what kind of programming. Right now, literally what he's been doing is meeting with groups that have expressed interest or are willing to make a commitment for using it, because as he projects, what is this thing going to cost to operate? Not only does he have to, right now, he's factoring in how much his air conditioner cost and electric and all the staffing needs. He's also trying to assess from the groups who would be using this theater and what would they be willing to pay in order to use it. That helps with the revenue projections, and then hopefully he can narrow down on a number of what's your maximum exposure in terms of a subsidy, because there'll be a shortfall, I can promise you that. It will not run at a profit, not with 400 seats. It's really a function of how large will that be and how much are you willing to absorb as a city. They will have fundraising opportunities, but we can't rely on that for giving you information about what your maximum exposure is.
Okay, well, the reason I ask all that, first of all, are they going out to the groups, or they're not just relying on the study from 2008?
No, day one, they had a whole bunch of phone conversations. Day two, they were down here meeting with the groups, the college, for example, and other users. And then they've been giving a whole lot of other leads. At some point, they're going to start calling you all in terms of understanding your vision for the theater. But the front end of this was really to understand who the potential users are so they can start doing some preliminary calculations.
I don't know if this is the time or the place for me to bring this up, but to me it's very important. One of our favorite things to do is to go to the movies. And since I was a little under the weather and I couldn't talk, Murph suggested we go to the movies Sunday afternoon. And he figured that way I can't talk during the movies and he was safe. So we happen to know the manager there, and he approached us, and you know, it's hard for him right now with the flagship cinema to fill those seats. He was telling me, I don't know, I put it on Facebook, I don't know if Ms. Fairclough saw it or not, but I reached out to her. They are doing an opera film every month. And last month, first month, after letting people know, they had big posters everywhere, they had one person come. One person in the audience. And what I wanted to do was to put, try to get the schools involved through you, Ms. Fairclough, and do a field trip for the next opera is going to be Carmen. It's a film, but it's cultural, and I know, when I was in 5th grade, I had an opportunity to go and see a live opera, and I never will forget it. It was Madame Butterfly, and it changed my world. I mean, I love it because of that, because I had that experience. And this is film, but still, it's important to our children to introduce the culture. My concern was, when I was having the conversation with him, if only one person came for that presentation, there's a lot of education that has to be done in our community to let people know what's going on and what we have potential to go on. So the operating expense is very important to me. My question to the manager is that what is the deadline to place what we want to place on the ballot? I believe would be March.
It's March, Carlos, 27th, somewhere around there? March 27th.
So if you put something on the ballot, can you take something off the ballot before the ballot happens?
I believe the answer is yes. The only issue I have really is the advertising thing. So if you think that that's a possibility, that it'll change before, then I think we'd have to make the commitment to not start the advertising campaign until we know what the referendum is.
I'm definitely adamant about starting the advertisement campaign on the police station. That we've all agreed on.
The only thing is it's just going to need to have, it comes in the mail and it's a brochure and it tells them about the police station and what they're going to be voting on. If you go...
But I would expect the same thing if
you could do separate mailers, that's...
Anything else that's going to be on the ballot, I would expect they would get that information as well.
Right.
I'm just trying not to put the cart before the horse. You just want to make sure.
I understand.
However, I do feel that it's such a small amount of money for the Seminole Theater a year, if people realize that. But then we have to wonder what's going to happen without that study if we have it, and then who's going to operate it. I mean, I was looking at the 2008 report. It was almost, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was like $350,000 for staff alone.
Right.
A year. That's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
So, I'll be curious to push that study to get finished soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, it's all yours.
Well, I think it's a very healthy conversation, and glad we had it. I particularly, I would like to see the police department built on the iconic attraction site, because that gives us the ability to have a municipal complex. The police department doesn't want to be in the same building. They want to have some separation, but we want to have some inclusiveness at the same time. And with the busway down the middle, you have the opportunity, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, having a metro rail run right through the center and having police services on one side and city services, library services on the other side. That's obviously, my best, my best guess. But the other thing that, we're talking about, and I've had this conversation with you. I'm still, I'm still very interested in this public-private partnership. We're talking about partnerships in every other aspect of what we're trying to do, and it's a very fast time frame that we're talking about doing and getting in front of the voters with the appropriate information for them to be able to give us back an educated answer, and that's a little concerning. So moving past, worst case scenario, none of the bond referendums pass, we still got the same problems. Nothing changes except for the taxpayer does not agree to tax themselves additionally for us to provide those services. And in that being said, I would wish, and one of the things that I've found, I mean, I've been very much interested in this since day one, but the House bill that was signed, the only thing that was significant that I could see or that has been told to me was the ability to have unsolicited bids received by the city. That's intriguing because one of the things that allows us to get away from the existing set of plans that we have at the table with regards to the City Hall site is possible unsolicited bid, meeting the same square footage, the design's a little separate. We're going to try to value engineer, my understanding, try to value engineer down the value of this City Hall site, and ultimately the same would be said with regards to the police building if that's the case. I just would like to see if we as a body had a choice A and a choice B, because right now we have choice A, meaning voter approved. I mean, we can take all of the cash available, the 16.6, and borrow. I guess you have the ability to borrow. I don't know what the city's ability to borrow is. I mean, it must be at least $8 million. It's got to be more than that. So the bottom line is we can at least borrow that much money to get the existing city hall. We have no mechanism in place to do the police department absent of the voter approving an additional tax on themselves. So I would hope that whoever's listening would present an unsolicited bid to do both, or to do all, parking garage and all. I know it long term. Look, we all do it at home. I buy a car. I don't have $5,000 cash to go buy a car. I put $1,000 down. I pay $4,000 over the next 5 years. That's how we do business in the private sector. Public sector doesn't do that. I mean, it hasn't done that. It's beginning to show up in some of the larger projects because the private sector seems to be where a lot of the money is right now. And for us to be able to possibly do 100% financing on both projects, spread it out over 30 plus years. Again, you're the detail guy. I'm just the popping all over the place guy. It gives us the opportunity to say, here's what it's going to cost us. We build it into our budget, just like I do at home. I decide to pay my house payment first, and I pay my car payment second, and then I don't go to the movies this week because I have to pay my car payment. And so we learn to live within our operational budget because it costs us this much to have this building. It costs us this much for the police to function. So at least if we knew that was an available option, it would definitely, in my mind, give us a little bit of flexibility because we're kind of backing we're backed into a corner. We've kicked the can as far down the road as the road exists, and then the can is demolished. So without having some other option available, I know it's more expensive over the long haul. But how much more expensive is it? How easy it is on the front end? Because I'm like the rest of the council. I think the city's going to do great. I think we're going to make the right decisions. We're going to increase revenues. Our property values are going to go up. And 3 years from now, 5 years from now, it's going to be a different set of circumstances. We're not going to be running a deficit budget because we're going to fix all that as we speak. So I just would hope that I'm going to support everything that's been discussed. I think we should go forward with the bond. I think we should do it as quickly as possible. We certainly have to figure out how to get the voter engaged and understanding, because without that, I don't think there's any chance of people voting a tax increase on themselves, and that's what we're doing. I mean, it's isolated, but it's still a tax increase. I think we have to include the Seminole Theater as part of that discussion. It's kind of like abandoning the City Hall site. We're so far down the road in partnership in the Seminole Theater, we can't do anything unless we finish it. It can never do anything unless it's finished, or we tear it down and make a parking garage out of it. So I'll support the council completely 100% on everything. Separate questions, special election, walk-in vote. I'm right there with everybody.
The early versus late, pre or post?
Say that again?
June, pre-June 1st or post-June 1st?
Pre-June.
Okay.
Pre-June, and I'm going to try to encourage another option, unsolicited option that gives us the ability to walk away from the $1 million plans that we're trying to we're trying to put a my opinion, just my opinion. We're trying to put a square peg into a round hole, trying to take a 2006, which is probably a 2004 idea about where the city's going, and plug it into a 2014, 2015 model that's totally different. We've got too much marble, we've got too much this, we've got too much size. I don't know. But if we could do a design build, as Julio said, it's quicker. We don't have to get, the private process is much smoother because they don't have all the restrictions. These are things that I think I know, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's where I am. I think we're on the right track. I believe that now's the time to take the bull by the horns and make the move. And hopefully Robert Barnes and colleagues of yours out there in the world would take a look at coming and offering us some opportunities or some suggestions on what we could do or what you could do for us and how much it would cost us over time. But I'm on board with the council completely on the short term, planning for maybe not having a success. And if we don't have that success, we still got that problem.
I understand.
Okay?
Thank you so much. This has probably been the most productive meeting.
I have a question.
Sure.
I just had a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to amplify one thing. This GOB, this is some heavy lifting, and we can't take this lightly. I'm a little worried about the timeline, and I don't want our haste in getting this on a ballot to potentially fail. So my recommendation is there have been entities that have been very successful in their GOB efforts. So there's a blueprint out there, and it's very important for us to capitalize on those best practices to ensure that our GOB is successful. So I'm going to really be looking at that marketing component to make sure we are positioning ourselves to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ms. Wallman.
Okay, with all respect, I thought I heard Mayor say something, and I just want to make sure I understand. So you're saying that you're encouraging people to come in with an unsolicited bid, therefore, we did that, then, I mean, we just went through this with the bowling alley, going out in a proper procedure. Ms. Faircloth led that race, and we all agree with her that we needed to go out and do the proper bidding process. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand that you are saying come in without going through the proper bidding process that a normal contractor would have to go through. I just want to make sure I really understand that.
It's a different, the way that I understand it, and is that the governor in the state of Florida is trying to encourage outside investment in opening up outside investment and it's down in the municipal levels to where someone can, if they know we have a series of projects which we've put out, basically square footage, basically needs, basically values, and then the outside entities, construction agencies, lending agencies, whatever those people are, much like what Blue Network was the original. I'm not suggesting that be but again, even if that were to come in, you still have to have a competitive process on that process. It still has to be open to anyone that wants to come in. An unsolicited bid can come in, and then someone can see that bid and say, well, I would like to submit a bid of X. So it's a more of a competitive process against the people coming to us with solutions, as opposed to us having to say, this is what I want, and tell me how much it's going to cost me to build what I want.
Well, all I know is that, and I went over that bid. I went over those numbers, and I'm a paper person. I've been in the paper business for a long time. So I understand 100% financing and having a landlord and somebody carrying back paper and probably selling that paper off, but I just want to put on the record that I am a staunch supporter of the regular bidding process that we have. I don't want anybody to be eliminated, but at the same time, I think it's very important, and the bowling alley was the perfect example. And I think we all sleep better at night because Ms. Faircloth did bring it up, because no one realized, you know, and it just was, it's just my thought that I'm very concerned about that.
Vice Mayor?
Just a question on kind of what had been brought up, and that is maybe for the attorney, and that is we are currently in the process now of going out to bid for City Hall based on lots of back and forth and processes and procedures. And so I just want to make sure that we don't somehow discourage people from participating in this process, because I think you've heard three of us now, and I'll be the fourth, say that we support what we decided, our prior decisions, and building City Hall downtown and following through with this bid process, because I don't want to see it where before people see possible shift in the sands and decide they don't want to bid now on this City Hall, and we're back to square one with three bidders. So that's my only concern with this. And is there any legality problems now with kind of soliciting a bid when we're already soliciting a formal bid? Is there because the police station and some of the other issues, that's fine. There's no official process underway, but I'm just curious because we have the City Hall process actually going forward now.
Well, I'm not qualified to comment on the psychological part of the discussion, but in terms of the legal part, there's no prohibition on sort of pursuing two different tracks at the same time. So you're going through your process, and then if someone happens to submit an unsolicited bid, you're certainly not prohibited from considering it or going through. There is a process, even with unsolicited bids, that you have to go through.
Right.
So you're not prohibited. There's no legal problem with it.
Okay, that was all. So the first question, so it seems like there's no legal no issues there. But again, from a perception issue, I just want to make sure the bidders that are hopefully going to bid on this process, you know, I still think we have a solidified group up here who are willing to consider and want to consider these bids as they come in. I don't want to discourage anybody from participating and giving us our best option with what we currently have, and we may decide to go somewhere different. But I just want to make sure we get the best shot at this.
Mr. Burgess, do you have something? I'm not speaking for the entire council when I make this suggestion. I'm just saying in my own way, in my own simple mind, that it would be nice to be able to have options, is all I'm asking for, is options. Because, you know, I'm not 100% sure, as Ms. Faircloth says, you know, we're carrying a very fast timeline, and historically, if you move too fast, sometimes people just lock up because you're moving too fast. They haven't had a chance to absorb what you just talked about, and so that lack of clarity, they just quit. So as a precaution, just as a discussion, because I'm not suggesting anything to the contrary. I think we have a process out there, parallel, you know, and then everything comes back to this body for every discussion available. You know, we don't have to only accept one option. We don't have to, you know, we're not in a corner as much, because let's just see what happens.
Me. The only reason I'm saying what I'm saying is because that's exactly what happened in the last bid process. When we opened up that creative financing with a certain entity, all of a sudden we had three bidders as opposed to how many do we have before? It was many. So I just don't, and Vice Mayor said it very, very nicely, I just don't want to, just certain things that we say here can discourage somebody to go through all the work that it takes to put a bid in. And it takes a lot of work to put a bid in. So that's all. You know, I just want to make sure that, because we've lived that already with the last bid process we had with City Hall. And that was simply because someone at the time wanted to add that creative financing bid, and we allowed it to happen, and then the bids fell off dramatically. And it's just a concern of mine.
The only point that I was really looking at was, for how many years has this community been led to believe that we were building a Taj Mahal? So unfortunately, at the end of the day, the plans are still the same plans. I'm not suggesting they're a Taj Mahal. Somebody else suggested that years ago, and that scenario has kind of stuck. And I don't want to be at odds with the council. I'm just throwing out my ideas much like everybody else did, and they're not, it's just a concept. It's just an idea. We're trying to get what we want to get done in an amount of time where the chief and his police officers are safe. The city hall's not in a strip mall. We've got Seminole Theater and a vibrant downtown with a parking garage. That's all. So, not at odds with you guys. I'm on board with everything that you're doing. My 2 cents was Plan B if it was an option.
Right, and the truth is, Mayor, at any time, anybody can submit an unsolicited proposal, and as they come in, if they come in, we'll analyze them just like everything else, but we'll follow the direction that we were given, which is we have a bid process, and I think you're all just about saying the same thing with slight variations, but I can't thank you enough for the productive dialogue. This was a lot to absorb, and it was a very productive meeting tonight, so thank you very much.
Anything final from the council? Vice Mayor, you had something you wanted to...
Yeah, two quick items. I needed to just update the council on these two issues. One was on the Homestead the National Parks trolley. We'd gotten a bunch of phone calls from people over this last 3-day weekend about whether or not the trolley was also running to the parks on Mondays. And so it is starting President's Day weekend, which I think is this weekend coming up. It will also be running that Monday to the national parks. So I just wanted to let the council know and the public know. And the last one also, the ridership, it's been pretty good. It's been 200 to 300 people on average each weekend, which is great. And one of the things that we're looking to do to help increase that is that one of these weekends upcoming, we haven't picked one yet, but we're going to actually have a second trolley for the sole purpose of local organizations riding. So the normal trolley system will run, but we'll try to get the Military Affairs Committee, the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club, the Chamber, and any other clubs that you guys or organizations you think of might be good to add. And we'll have them run on Saturday and Sunday so that they can see firsthand exactly what the trolley's about, where it goes, and hopefully help through word of mouth, talk about it and get people more excited about going on the trolley.
To the mayor, if I may, Councilman Shelley, I'm glad you mentioned that. At our last Mayor's Youth Council meeting, we had decided that we're going to take a field trip. We're going to ride on the trolley to go downtown. So if you have those dates,
I will make sure that they give you those dates. We haven't picked it yet. I know I'll be having that meeting, I think, next week. Maybe it's on Monday. This coming up Monday? I think is 2 weeks. We'll have our probably another trolley meeting. That's when we'll decide those weekends. I'll make sure they reach out to you and the Mayor's Youth Council. And in the meantime, if anybody else thinks of any other organizations that we should include in our invite, we'll just fill up the seats as we can for those 2 days, and it'll kind of be a one weekend only event type. So perfect. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, you did.
I skipped tab 3, and I was corrected. So tab 3 is the minutes of the January 14th meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. One thing, Mr. Manager, could you and the chief find out what's going on in Keys Gate with the towing of vehicles? I don't know much about it, but they've got a problem out there. Just somebody check that out? Absolutely. Anything final from council? Motion to adjourn?
I was just going to say happy anniversary to my love. Valentine's Day is our anniversary.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Oh, and Dennis will not be a single man the next time we see him, Dennis Maytan.
All in favor of motion to adjourn? Aye. Okay, motion carries.